Chapter 150. Murphy's response put Yang Yi at ease. Sir, you may not understand. I'm not from the entertainment industry, so I don't know much about how TV series are shot. However, I hope that my book can be made into a classic TV series, not a lousy one, Yang Yi said with a smile. Chen Fengchen raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, Are you saying that I'm a director who shoots lousy TV series? Director Chen is still very authoritative in the TV series industry, Murphy whispered to Yang Yi. Yang Yi gently patted Murphy's leg. Although there was a layer of cloth between them, the summer blouse was as thin as a cicada's wing. The plump elasticity was clearly reflected in his hand. Of course not. I don't know much about it. That's why I watched some of your previous TV series a few days ago. I've shot a lot of military TV series. Yes, I can see that you're very good at shooting both war scenes and character dialogue scenes. You're able to shoot the rhythm just right and portray the character's emotions in great detail. Yang Yi nodded. The only flaw is, Chen Fengchen did not expect a young brat to dare say that his TV series was flawed. He was a little upset, but he still chuckled and said, Is that so? Tell me about it. The war scenes are too fake. There are dozens of extras running back and forth. The so-called hail of bullets looks like burying a few strings of firecrackers in the ground and exploding them. The guns in their hands are also waving as if they've pulled the trigger. It's just a sound, but there's no movement. Yang Yi pointed it out without hesitation. In his previous life, people called it the 50-cent special effects. Chen Fengchen was stunned for a moment, and his face turned red. Yang Yi was right. When he was shooting, he was not willing to invest more in the explosion effects. Instead, he was more willing to capture the details of the characters and close-ups of their faces. In other words, it was difficult to get the adrenaline to soar. Soldier's assault is fine, but drawing sword won't be able to capture the feeling if there's not enough war scenes. Yang Yi continued. Chen Fengchen wanted to say, Why don't I just shoot soldier's assault? He did not want drawing sword anymore. However, how could he bear to part with drawing sword? Just the thought of fighting the Japanese made his blood boil, even at his age. Of course, soldier's assault was also to his liking. As long as it was shot with care, this TV series would not be too bad. Of course, it was impossible for him to shoot two TV series at the same time, but he did not want to give drawing sword to someone else either. Therefore, he could only buy both of them and shoot one a year. But the problem was, how could they satisfy Yang Yi's needs? Making special effects costs a lot of money. We're just filming a TV series. Chen Fengchen tried to complain, but at this moment, he had unknowingly fallen into a disadvantageous position. No matter how much money you burn, you still have to shoot a classic. If you can't find a suitable place to shoot in capital city, can't find enough excellent extras and lack supplies, I can give you a suggestion. Come to Jiangcheng to shoot in the Jiangnan military region. Their general has personally promised that if you want to shoot drawing sword and soldier's assault, they will fully support you if necessary. Yang Yi chuckled and said, With the support of a large military region, are you afraid that you won't be able to find a master of explosives? These words were indeed proposed by Old Master Chiu Weigua and the others. General Lu Pingju also nodded. You have such a deep relationship with the military? Chen Fengchen could not help but look at Yang Yi in a new light. He felt that Yang Yi's background was a bit unfathomable. He had married a big star as his wife and had a relationship with the general of the military region. Chen Fengchen could not help but misunderstand. Yang Yi was well aware of it, but he did not point it out. He even smiled slightly and said vaguely, I'm also a soldier after all. Since you have the support of the Jiangnan military region, I'll give up my old life and shoot a big war drama for you. Chen Fengchen gritted his teeth and said, Not only that, I hope that Director Chen will choose the right actors. It doesn't matter if they're famous or not, but they must have an absolute passion for acting. They must also be able to portray the character's characteristics. For example, Su Sandua's naivety, or Li Yunlong's slyness and rudeness. Yang Yi said. Chen Fengchen was quite disdainful of Yang Yi's new request. He raised his head and said, Little brother Yang, it seems that you're underestimating me, Chen Fengchen. I, Chen Fengchen, am famous in the industry for being stubborn. No matter who the actor is, as long as I don't like them, they can forget about being used by me. That's true. Director Chun has a good reputation when it comes to selecting actors and training new actors, Murphy said to Yang Yi. All right then, old mister, please name a price. If you're suitable and satisfy the 2 reasons I mentioned before, then I'll give the copyright of these 2 books to you. It's not a problem. Yang Yi smiled slightly. Of course, I hope that old mister can film it as soon as possible. For years. If it's not finished by then, I have the right to take back the copyright. Chun Fengchen didn't really care about this issue. He originally wanted to buy it as soon as possible so that he could arrange for the filming. However, he was the one who asked Yang Yi for the price just now. Now that the ball was kicked back to him by Yang Yi, he had to think carefully before raising it. 5 million. 5 million for each book, plus a 6% share of the revenue, Chun Fengchen said. 5 million for the film copyright wasn't bad. It could be said that it was above average in the industry. As for the 6% share of the revenue, it needed to be considered. After all, it was usually 5% to 18%. 6% was only a little higher than the minimum standard set by the Copyright Association. Yang Yi didn't have the extravagant hope of getting 18%, unless his work was good enough and could complete the scriptwriter's work at the same time. Yang Yi didn't have the time to accompany Chun Fengchen to prepare the script. 5 million only includes the film copyright, but I want 15% of the revenue share, Yang Yi said firmly. How is that possible? Chun Fengchen jumped up in excitement. Even Lu Shuping didn't dare to ask for 15%. How is it possible for a new writer like you to ask for 15%? Lu Shuping was a well-known traditional writer in this world. His works had been adapted into several TV dramas, and they were all very popular. It could be said that he could get the highest share of the revenue he could get. He was the benchmark of the industry. However, when Chun Fengchen said that he couldn't get 15%, Yang Yi was reserved. Who knew if this old man was lying? Lu Shuping also didn't announce the details of his contract. So old mister doesn't have much confidence in my work. How about this? Let's sign a bet. Yang Yi revealed his sincere smile again. If Chun Yijie was here, he would definitely tell Chun Fengchen that he would rather die than bet with Yang Yi. However, no one persuaded Chun Fengchen. He was even interested. Bet. Okay, tell me. Chapter 151. Mom, Little Guai, Little Gray, and Dondo, are they boys or girls? In the evening, after taking a shower, Shishi wanted to see if the kittens were asleep. Murphy had no choice but to take her to the cat nest in the living room, but she was not allowed to reach out and touch them. The little guy looked at the 3 kittens who were tired and had fallen asleep early, and tried to ask in a low voice. Little Gray is the older brother, Dondo is the older sister, and Little Guai is the younger brother. Murphy glanced at Yang Yi, who happened to pass by, and said with a smile. As she expected, the expression on Yang Yi's face was gloomy. So Little Guai is the younger brother. Shishi pouted and defended Little Guai. But why do the older brother and sister bully Little Guai even though it is the youngest? How do they bully it? Murphy asked curiously. She felt that the 3 kittens were quite united and often played together. They even snuggled up to each other when they slept, as if hugging each other for warmth. Because they can fight, and Little Guai can't beat them. It's so pitiful, Shishi complained to her mother. Then I took it out and didn't let it be bullied. Murphy understood. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry and rubbed her daughter's soft long hair. She said angrily, they are not bullying Little Guai. Cats playing with each other is their special little game. Only when they play can they learn all kinds of skills. Oh. Shishi was so surprised that her little mouth formed an O shape. So in the future, don't disturb Little Guai when it plays with its brothers and sisters, Murphy said. Shishi, you will go to kindergarten to play with other children in the future. You have to learn from each other. Of course you can't fight. We are not kittens. Yes. Shishi doesn't fight with children. Cici nodded longingly. She was quite looking forward to it. Scenes of playing with many children appeared in her mind. Of course, Shishi didn't realize that when she went to kindergarten, her father wouldn't be with her. After Shishi fell asleep, Murphy went to Yang Yi's study. Although she was wearing short-sleeved pajamas, every part of her body was buttoned up tightly and seamlessly. There was no danger of exposing her body. Of course, the aloof goddess on TV who had no makeup on, and was dressed so casually sitting next to him was always somewhat attractive. However, Yang Yi was focused on drawing on his newly bought digital sketchpad, and didn't have time to look up at her. "What are you drawing?" Murphy asked curiously. She saw that Yang Yi was drawing a man with his back facing her. His scalp was green as if he had just shaved his head. This man was tall and skinny. His face was fair and clean, but his body was covered with colorful and terrifying tattoos. Yang Yi was carefully drawing his tattoo. "I'm drawing an illustration. It's an illustration for my new book," Yang Yi said casually. "Why are all your books about strange things?" Murphy curled her lips and said, "I've read your first 2 books. They're quite normal." There were physical books for soldier assault and drawing sword at home. Of course, Murphy had flipped through them. She had even protested to Yang Yi about the female protagonist's constant death in drawing sword. Of course, the first 2 books were quite good. Although Murphy had no interest in military literature, she could still read them. However, the illustration for Yang Yi's new book made her feel uneasy. She couldn't bring herself to read it. "It's a different theme," Yang Yi answered simply. The illustration was almost finished. Yang Yi sped up and drew the last few strokes before turning his head to chat with Murphy. "Why did you negotiate such an unfair condition with Director Chin today?" Murphy asked in confusion. "If the ratings exceed 10%, you'll get a 7% share. If it exceeds 15%, you'll get 12%. If it's the annual ratings champion, you'll only get 16%. There's still hope for the first one. It's not difficult for Director Chen's TV series to exceed 10%, but it's impossible for the latter too. Breaking 15% of the ratings was only possible if it was a famous work, right? As for the ratings champion, it was not only based on one's own results. It also depended on the opponent and the arrangement of the TV station. The right time, place, and people were indispensable. That's because I have confidence in my work." Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, "Even if I can't win, I think it can still exceed 15%. As long as Director Chen works hard, these 2 shows have great potential." Drawing sword was needless to say. The glorious results in his previous life were enough to prove it. As for Soldier's Assault, its broadcast results were average in his previous life, but that was not the reason. After all, not many people watched it on the TV stations that broadcast it. However, Yang Yi still believed that this series with good reviews should be able to achieve the results it deserved if it could be broadcast on Central TV in this life. "Well, I think Director Chen finds it unbelievable when he sees you." Murphy covered her mouth and laughed. "I can't believe someone just said those words to him. That's too disgraceful." Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, "I don't care what he thinks. I'm not in the entertainment industry, so there's no need for me to bow down to the so-called authority in your circle. If there's anything to say, I'll say it. For example, the explosion scene in his TV series isn't exciting enough. That's a flaw that needs to be fixed. I really don't understand what you men are thinking. What's so good about fighting and killing all day?" Murphy snorted. "By the way, do you know what made me happiest today?" Yang Yi asked. Murphy was still unaware that Yang Yi had changed the topic. She asked in confusion, "What was it? Did you sign a new contract and sell the film rights to make money?" "No." Yang Yi shook his head. "Hurry up and say it. I hate people who keep others in suspense," Murphy said angrily. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile. He looked at Murphy and said, "When you introduced me to Chen Fengchen today, you said I was your husband." Murphy's face instantly flushed red. She bit her lower lip and stared at Yang Yi with a hint of annoyance. Ee. Yang Yi was a little embarrassed by her stare and laughed foolishly. "Who said you were my husband?" Murphy refused to admit it. "You said it. I heard it all. That was a temporary measure. I can't say you were a passerby, right?" She was watching from the side. Murphy puffed up her cheeks and said angrily, "That means you've accepted me in your heart." Yang Yi said, "Accept your ass." Murphy turned her head and snorted. "Why should I accept you? Just a cup of coffee?" I'm still angry. Yang Yi had a headache. He couldn't figure out a woman's thoughts. He felt that Murphy's anger had mostly dissipated, but he didn't expect her to still be angry. Men didn't like this. They said everything directly. If they cared, they cared. If they didn't care, they could just turn around and let it go. Even if they were angry, they would have calmed down overnight. Women were still troublesome. Of course, Yang Yi was willing to stir up trouble. He had chosen the path himself. No matter how hard and tiring it was, he had to walk it. Murphy stood up and patted Yang Yi's shoulder coolly. Confucius said, "There's still a long way to go. Yang Yi, you still need to continue working hard, do you understand?" P.S. Actually, it was Zheng Zi who said that. Chapter 152. In Guangzhou, Mu Yuqing had not logged on to read his latest book for several days. His previous project was nearing the end stage, and he was so busy that he barely had time to sleep, let alone pick up his phone to read novels. Today, the final testing work was finally completed. It could be said that everything was ready and waiting for the customer to check and accept it the day after tomorrow. Mu Yuqing only stayed behind with a few maintenance staff, and gave the other brothers who had worked hard for more than half a month a day off. Of course, although he stayed in the company, he was also free and could read novels. I've collected dozens of chapters of Remaining Sins, right? This time I can read it to my heart's content. Mu Yuqing thought happily and put his legs on the desk. There were not many people in the project team anyway, so he could sit or lie down if he wanted to. However, in the next second, he almost fell out of his chair. What the hell? Mu Yuqing turned over and sat up straight with difficulty. He then growled in a low voice. He was stunned to see a new advertisement banner hanging on the webpage. Soldier Assault, Drawing Sword, Remaining Sins, author Yang Yi, new book Prison Break. See you on September 1st. This level of publicity was obviously enjoyed by a great author. Of course, Yang Yi had already enjoyed it long ago. Mu Yuqing was not surprised by this. However, Mu Yuqing found it hard to believe. I haven't read for a while. Is Remaining Sins finished? He quickly clicked on the page of Remaining Sins, but it was obvious that the book was still in a serialized state. Or was it about to end? Mu Yuqing did not believe it. Even if he had not read for several days, according to the direction of the plot, the book was definitely not ending yet. Fortunately, the book review section gave him an answer. Many readers had already exploded like Mu Yuqing. They were yelling and asking if Yuzue was going to stop updating. If so, they quickly sent Yang Yi's address. They wanted to send razor blades or teddy bears to guarantee that Yang Yi could open a razor blade shop or a pet shop. Yang Yi naturally did not respond. It was Chiyue's official notice that Remaining Sins would be updated as usual, and Prison Break was just Yang Yi's new stove. So this was the rhythm of a double opening? Mu Yuqing frowned. He didn't like authors who had a dual career. It was like a man who had a foot in both boats. If he wasn't focused, it would be harmful to both books. There was a manually pinned post in the book review section. It had already been refreshed tens of thousands of times. It was these readers who were anxiously asking the editors to read the book. They had to persuade Yang Yi to give up on this idea. Mu Yuqing sighed inwardly. He silently followed behind and signed in. He didn't know why, but after hearing this news he suddenly felt bored. It was like a man's sage mode. He didn't even want to read novels anymore. However, just as he was about to close the book review section, a post caught his attention. Don't spout nonsense if you haven't seen it. I think Prison Break will be great. The person who posted the post urged everyone not to rush to comment on Prison Break. Go to its homepage first before commenting. Homepage? Have you created a homepage for it? Mu Yuqing thought about it and decided to open it. After all, he still had a firm understanding of Yang Yi's strength. Oh, what's this? After opening the homepage of Prison Break, Mu Yuqing couldn't help but take a deep breath. A colorful and messy tattoo came into view. It was just a half-length picture. It was obviously a man's tattoo, but it was densely packed with moms. It covered almost the entire body and even extended to her neck. The tattoo was made up of strange patterns. It looked like a Western church, gods, demons, and monsters, but Mu Yuqing obviously couldn't recognize it. It looks like an extremely evil person. So many tattoos. Scary. Mu Yuqing thought of the book's name and secretly decided on it. However, this promotional picture released by Qiyue's official website wasn't that simple. Mu Yuqing noticed that the artist was Yang Yi. Yang Yi knows how to draw? Mu Yuqing was pleasantly surprised. So this tattoo wasn't used for sensationalism? Maybe the pattern on it had a deeper meaning. Under the homepage, there were already many readers discussing this tattoo in the comments section. There were even fans who were trying to figure out where the gods, demons, and monsters on the tattoo belonged to. Unknowingly, Mu Yuqing already had a very high interest in this book. Forget it, let's open both. With Yang Dada's ability, he should be able to handle it. I'm looking forward to the exciting story of Prison Break. Escaping from prison? That's a pretty good theme. A book friend commented, expressing Mu Yuqing's thoughts at the moment. In Jiangcheng, on the street outside a kindergarten, a burly car was parked outside. What do you have to see outside? Murphy's voice rang out in the car. She muttered to Yang Yi. Can't we just go in and visit? Of course, you and Shishi go in and take a look. I'll wait outside. Shishi also leaned against the car window and looked around curiously. Mom, what are we looking at? Yang Yi had a different opinion. Just walk in directly and you won't see anything. What you see will be displayed by others. It's no different from what's on your flyer. In fact, we don't know how the children are taken care of by the teachers. Murphy admitted that Yang Yi's words made sense. She was puzzled and asked, then what should we do? I'll have to do it. You guys wait for me in the car. Yang Yi smiled, unbuckled his seatbelt, and pushed the door open. Before Murphy could stop him, Yang Yi had already walked out. She quickly leaned against the car window to see what Yang Yi was going to do. She saw Yang Yi's figure disappear into a deserted alley. Just as Murphy was puzzled, she suddenly saw Yang Yi appear on the rooftop of someone's two-story building. How did he get up there? Mo Fei was dumbfounded. That tall and agile figure seemed to be doing parkour. In the blink of an eye, he had already jumped over several rooftops and arrived at the side of the kindergarten. With a leap, his figure disappeared again. This bastard. Murphy couldn't help but gritted her teeth and muttered. She remembered the time when Shishi was suddenly stolen by Yang Yi. Obviously, it was with this skill that he did bad things. Shishi turned her head doubtfully, looked at Mom, and then asked, Mom, where did Papa go? He went to buy something for us. Shishi pouted and unhappily said, Papa didn't take Shishi with him. He's so bad. Because Shishi wants to accompany Mom. Mama is very scared in the car alone. Mo Fei comforted her. Shishi suddenly forgot her unhappiness, quickly nodded, took her mother's hand and said, Well then Shishi will accompany you. Mom, don't be afraid. Shishi is not afraid. After about a quarter of an hour, Yang Yi came back. His face was as usual, as if he was not the one who was jumping around on the roof just now. This kindergarten is not good. The teachers are all sitting on the side and chatting. They let the children play with toys by themselves. They are not responsible at all. Yang Yi shook his head and said to Murphy, Papa, what did you buy for us? Shishi stuck her head out and expectantly asked. Yang Yi's head was full of question marks. Chapter 153. After a few days of in-depth visits, Yang Yi and Murphy finally chose Shishi's kindergarten to be on the other side of the mountain, which was a private kindergarten near the villa area where Yang Yi often went to buy vegetables. It was geared toward children from rich families, so naturally, the school conditions and relevant measures were better than those of ordinary kindergartens. Yang Yi was more satisfied with the strict management of the kindergarten teachers, and the emphasis on the teachers' professional ethics. Mo Fei also agreed with this kind of kindergarten, because it could be seen from the brochure that although it did not set up those interest tutoring classes, it would invite some calligraphers, painters, musicians, and other professionals in the city to show the children almost every week, so that the children would be able to stimulate their inner interests in the play of artistic activities. Every month, the kindergarten would organize the children to learn and rehearse plays, both in Chinese and English. At the end of the semester, there would be a party where parents would be invited to participate, and the children would perform and show their talents. This was very good. It was educational and fun, and Shishi would not be burdened with heavy schoolwork at such a young age. Murphy and Yang Yi were very satisfied. After registering Shishi, Murphy's most important task for this holiday had been accomplished, and the date of her return to work was gradually approaching. This made Murphy very unhappy. Why should I be mentally prepared to go back and prepare for the new album while Yang Yi, you big bastard, can still be lazy at home every day? Therefore, Yang Yi was forced by Murphy to open a shop downstairs. You have to get busy before me, understand? Murphy leaned against the bar counter and looked at Yang Yi, who was helplessly wiping the coffee cup over and over again, and snorted proudly. Yang Yi and his daughter looked at each other and smiled. He smiled helplessly. Shishi, on the other hand, thought it was funny. She didn't understand that the small quarrel between her parents was also a form of fun, but Shishi liked to see her father being bullied by her mother, just as sometimes Shishi would bully her father. For example, once Shishi suddenly jumped up with a quilt on her body, making threatening gestures. Her father was stunned for a moment, and then his face was full of fear. Haha, Papa is scared. Shishi laughed happily, but the little girl did not forget to run over and comfort her father. Papa, don't be afraid. It's Shishi. Since the shop was open, it was inevitable that there would be guests. Although there were few, it would not be good if Murphy's identity was exposed. Therefore, when there were guests coming in, Murphy would cleverly pull Shishi to sit in the innermost booth, pretending that they were also guests. For example, now Shishi's eyes were the sharpest. She saw a few girls walking around the flower bed to the shop. She quickly ran over and said, Mom, let's run. There are a few aunties coming. Murphy and Shishi quickly returned to their seats, where Shishi's toys were. However, the guests this time were a few young and beautiful girls. Mo Fei couldn't help but sneak a peek outside and eavesdrop on them. Yang Yi still stood in his bar counter as usual, without any expression, and did not take the initiative to greet them. Several girls pushed the door open, but did not come in immediately. They just chattered at the door. Is it here? It seems to be. Let's go in and have a look. It's very strange to stand outside. So they swarmed in, bright and beautiful faces. Murphy looked at them from afar and could not help but sigh. It's still good to be young. They were all young girls, but when they came in, they did not think about ordering coffee, but looked at Yang Yi unscrupulously. Yang Yi was a little scared by their stares. You, what do you want to drink? Yang Yi finally opened his golden mouth. Boss, is your shop called the Corner Coffee Shop? After a burst of pushing, a girl with waist-length hair was pushed out, and she plucked up the courage to ask Yang Yi. Yes. Yang Yi paused and said, We are a coffee shop. He also repeated, wanting them to make their purpose clear. If you come to a coffee shop, you should drink coffee. Why are you looking at me? Behind the girl with waist-length hair, several girls could not help but whisper. Not far away, Yang Yi could hear their conversation. I think it's very possible. Look at this shop, there are a lot of records on the shelf. At first glance, you can tell that the boss is a person who likes music very much. Just because you like to listen to songs doesn't mean you can write songs, right? I also like to listen to songs. Why don't you see me writing songs? Just forget about it, okay? What do you mean forget about it? Look at the boss's appearance, big and rough. Look at me. Who do you think is more similar between the two of us? Please spare me. You're a woman, he's a man. She's a tough woman. That was heart-wrenching. Look at that piano. I think it's very possible. If you don't know music, who would put a piano in the shop? You don't know? Let me tell you. High-end coffee shops have pianos, and they even invite people to play them. It's very romantic. Okay, don't argue. Let's just ask. After a while of discussion, the girl with waist-length hair was pushed out again. She smiled at Yang Yi. This girl was quite good-looking. Her facial features were regular, and her skin was white and beautiful. She was probably used to using her smile to charm the little boys. But this trick was useless against Yang Yi. Hello, are you the boss of this shop? Yang Yi listened to their conversation. He was still confused, but he vaguely felt that something was wrong. But he did not care and nodded. Then are you Mu Xiang? The girl with waist-length hair looked at Yang Yi expectantly and asked. Yang Yi finally realized that something was wrong, but he still firmly shook his head. Behind them, Murphy listened to their conversation and could not help but secretly laugh. They actually think that Yang Yi is Mu Xiang? How did they make the connection? Yes, Yang Yi also wanted to know. He calmly took down a record from the shelf behind him and said, "The Mu Xiang you are talking about, is he the songwriter of the song in this record? Why did you say that I am him?" "Boss, you also like his song? We are all fans of Chen Yijie. The song he wrote for Chen Yijie. Long time no see is really nice," a girl with dark red hair said with her eyes lit up. Yesterday, Chen Yijie accidentally revealed that Mu Xiang opened a shop in Jiang City in a program. So we came to look for him. "Boss, isn't the name of your shop the coffee shop on the street corner?" "So we guessed that it was you. So that was it." Yang Yi calmly shook his head and said, "How is that possible? I changed the signboard later. I like this song very much." "Then boss, is your surname Li?" "No, my surname is Yang." "Mu Xiang, it seems that his name should be Liang. But his surname is Yang." Yang Yi's denial dispelled their suspicions. Originally, they did not think that Yang Yi was Mu Xiang. Although their faces were full of disappointment, the girls still politely bought coffee for takeout. When they left, they muttered, "I said that he doesn't look like him. Mu Xiang must be a handsome and thin young man, and there must be a story." Yang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry and secretly shook his head. When he turned his head, he saw that Murphy was looking at him with shining eyes. Yang Yi could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. He thought that he had been exposed. Chapter 154. Murphy stared at Yang Yi, which made Yang Yi's hair stand on end. Well, they misunderstood because of the signboard. Yang Yi wanted to explain. However, Murphy shook her head. "It's really a misunderstanding." Yang Yi tried to explain. His heart was beating like a drum. He was already secretly thinking if he should admit it if Murphy continued to interrogate him. Anyway, he had already laid the groundwork and thought of an excuse. He just wanted to wait until Murphy released the album, so that she wouldn't feel burdened. However, Murphy shook her head and said, "I know you're not Mu Xiang. Isn't it obvious?" Then, she looked into Yang Yi's eyes and said, "I just realized that there are many girls who come to your shop to buy coffee. Perhaps it was because school was about to start, but there were several groups of customers in the coffee shop today. The ratio of girls was obviously higher than the ratio of boys. Moreover, they were basically young and beautiful girls." Yang Yi heard and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. So they were discussing the gender of the customers. That was scary. It's normal to have many girls. This is Jiangqing Media University. It's famous for the imbalance between men and women. Except for some science colleges, there are more girls than boys, especially for the students in the arts. It's said that the ratio of girls to boys is shockingly 4:1. Yang Yi said with a smile. "Who wants to discuss the ratio of girls to girls with him?" Murphy rolled her eyes at him. She didn't want to talk to him, but she was still a little unwilling. "You're not allowed to sell cappuccino to them in the future." Murphy snorted and said, "And you're not allowed to have cappuccino on the menu." Cappuccino was one of the ways to drink coffee. However, in this world, there was no coffee mixed with Italian espresso, steam milk, and foam milk called cappuccino. Murphy heard Yang Yi say that his latte coffee was cappuccino, so she thought that the heart-shaped latte coffee was cappuccino. "I only sell original, handmade coffee here," Yang Yi reminded Murphy. "But why did you say that cappuccino is not allowed on the menu? I was wondering if I should buy a milk foam machine. Maybe some customers would order this type of coffee." "Don't sell it." Murphy looked at him angrily. "You can only sell your original coffee. You have to know how to refuse, okay?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Okay, I also want to stick to my principles." Mo Fei was almost amused by this unreliable guy. However, she still wanted more. "In the future, you're only allowed to make cappuccinos for me, do you understand?" "Sure, I can try a new shape next time," Yang Yi said excitedly. "There are many ways to play with it, such as making it into the shape of a leaf or a palm tree. I want you to make me the one you made the other day, the heart-shaped one." Murphy pouted. She was furious. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. Looking at Murphy, he finally understood what they were talking about just now. In the capital, at the barbecue stall in Xiren village, Guizi was eating and drinking with his brothers who had drifted from Beijing. Xiaogua, let me give you a toast. A short, swarthy brother from the countryside stood up and said with a red face while holding a wine glass. Although you are younger than me, I think I should call you Teacher Gua, because I have learned a lot from you these days. And I have improved a lot. Gengsha, don't say that. Aren't we all learning from each other? And improving each other? Guizi quickly stood up with a wine glass. This was his farewell banquet. He was going back to Jiang City tomorrow, and was about to report for school. Guizi wanted to treat his brothers to a good meal. It had been many years since he left, and he didn't know when they would meet again. Therefore, Guizi also drank a few glasses of beer. He didn't have much alcohol tolerance, so he was a little dizzy. Gengsha spoke in his rustic Mandarin and said, No, Teacher Gua, I have to thank you. Not only did I learn a lot from you, but you also praised us before you left and introduced us to Brother Bin and Director Wan. These are all small things. I am also pushing the boat with the current. Whether you can seize the opportunity to have a meteoric rise or not, it still depends on your own efforts. Guizi said. Are you done? A few brothers began to kick up a fuss. If you don't eat this barbecue, it will be eaten up by us. Gengsha puffed out his chest, raised his glass respectfully, and said loudly, I won't say much. I wish you a bright future, Teacher Gua, a good person, a peaceful life. With that, Gengsha raised his head and finished the glass of beer. Hey, just call me Xiaogua. Guizi called out. He didn't hesitate and finished the beer with Gengsha. At the same time, in a bar in Jiangqing's Tingshan district, it was crowded. Some young men and women were drinking, some were talking loudly, and of course, there were also people jumping in the middle of the dance floor. Sorry, please make way. Ding Xiang was squeezed around in the crowd. She was thin and small like duckweed with no support. She was working part-time. A little sister introduced her to a daily job. Moreover, the bar only opened at night. It just so happened that she could miss the appointment with Senior Mao Peifu to welcome the newcomers. Of course, Ding Xiang wasn't working as a beer girl here. She was dark and thin and her figure was flat. Even if she was asked to be a beer girl, she probably wouldn't be able to do it. She was holding a rag, a broom, and a trash spatula, shuttling back and forth in every corner of the bar, cleaning up the beer bottles, cups, cigarette butts, and other debris left behind by the customers who left. Perhaps there would also be small white umbrellas that would appear in dark corners that needed to be cleaned. At first, Ding Xiang was a little embarrassed, but later, she got used to it. That's right, Ding Xiang was doing the work of a cleaner. The money wasn't much, but she secretly calculated that if she worked hard for more than 10 days, she should be able to earn enough living expenses for September. This job wasn't easy at all. The main thing was that she had to shuttle through the crowd often, which was very tiring. When she was tired, Ding Xiang would also stand at the edge of the crowd and listen to the bar's resident singer on the stage sing. I've let down too many people. Today I've become a victim and treat you with sincerity. On the stage was a handsome young man. Apparently, his name was Lin Muan. However, because he was singing a Cantonese song, it was difficult to resonate with the bar in Jiangqing. Silly boy. Wishful thinking of finding a beautiful beginning. Wanting you to see through this heart. But falling down is very ironic. Come and go, but still can't change the will of heaven. Actually, Ding Xiang couldn't understand it either, but she felt that Lin Muan's singing was quite nice. His voice was just like his personality, clean, but with a hint of sadness that couldn't kill people. It was very infectious. This kind of guy, it was as if he was shrouded in a layer of fog, very attractive to girls. Ding Xiang was no exception. After all, she was also a girl. But it was just admiration. Ding Xiang looked at her gloves a little self-abashedly, but still turned to work. Another customer had left, and there was a table that needed her to clean up. Note 1. The lyrics of this song came from the real Hong Kong singer Zhou Baihao's Silly Boy, pretending to exist in that world. Friends who are interested in Cantonese songs can listen to it. Chapter 155. Early in the morning, by the flower bed where butterflies were flying, Murphy leaned against the lush banyan tree and watched Yang-yi and her daughter practice kung fu with a faint smile. It was a bit inaccurate to say that they were practicing kung fu. It would be better to say that Yang-yi was teaching Shishi how to wield a sword. As usual, Yang-yi asked Shishi to do a few sets of lunging movements so that she could move her body. In the past, Yang-yi had planned to gradually increase Shishi's exercise volume. But Murphy was worried that her daughter would be trained to be a tough woman, so she strictly forbade Yang-yi to let Shishi train her muscles. However, when practicing kung fu, Shishi's face was still quite serious. The little girl was wearing a pink short-sleeved shirt and shorts while practicing kung fu. Coupled with her serious expression, she was a bit cool. "Today Dad will teach you a trick. It doesn't have any practical effect, but it's very beautiful," Yang-yi said. "Watch Dad perform it first." Shishi watched very seriously, and Murphy also opened her eyes wide with interest. Yang-yi held the sword by his wrist and took a slight step forward. With the inertia of his waist, he began to wield the sword. Although the stainless steel sword had not yet been sharpened, it was still shining with silver light. When he waved it, it was as if the light connected into a line, and the line connected into a surface, like a blooming sword flower. "Amazing!" Murphy couldn't help but exclaim. She couldn't tell what was amazing about it, but from an aesthetic point of view, this kind of fancy trick was very attractive. Shishi was the same. It was hard for her to resist beautiful things. Although the little girl still looked serious, she couldn't wait to clench her small fists and whispered, "I want to learn, Papa. I want to learn this." Yang-yi stopped. He smiled and put the sword aside, then twisted his wrist and said, "Come Shishi, exercise your wrists with Dad first." Although Shishi longed to be able to wield a sword as well as her father, she had become much more patient after these days of training. She obediently exercised her wrists together with her father. On the other hand, Murphy playfully put her hands behind her back and strode over. Like a thief, she picked up Yang-yi's sword. She wanted to learn how to wield it, but the moment she lifted it, she felt a heavy weight. "Wow! It's so heavy!" Murphy exclaimed. She couldn't hold it with one hand, so she had to hold it with both hands. Hearing this, Shishi looked over. The little girl proudly puffed out her chest and said, "Because Papa is strong, just like Sun Wukong. He needs to carry heavy weapons." Yang-yi took the iron sword from the disappointed Murphy. He smiled and said, "If you want to play, I'll get someone to beat you up later." "No need, no need." Murphy shook her head and said, "I don't have time to play. I'm about to start recording songs again." Well, she was about to go back to the company to prepare for the new album. For the sake of convenience, she naturally had to live in the house in the coastal area. Yang-yi was reluctant to part with her, but he still had to understand Murphy's hard work, so he didn't ask her to stay. Yang-yi shook his head, sorted out his thoughts, and then continued to explain to Shishi. "Our move is called sword drawing flower. There are two kinds of it. One is wrist cutting flower, and the other is wrist lifting flower." Yang-yi and Shishi each held a sword and stood face to face. Shishi also imitated her father and raised the wooden sword in her hand. No matter which one, you have to pay attention to the gesture. Like this, clasp your two fingers tightly, but don't clasp too tightly. Keep your wrist and the sword flexible. "But Shishi doesn't know how to turn it," the little girl pouted and said to her father. Yang-yi handed the sword to his left hand, and held Shishi's little hand with his right hand. He taught her, "Come on, follow Dad's movements. Take your time." In the wrist-cutting flower, the direction of the sword's rotation is from the outside down, in and then out again. Under her father's hands-on guidance, Shishi quickly formed a certain muscle memory, and could slowly draw the sword a little. "I'm so tired. My hands are sore." Shishi couldn't hold it for a while. After all, she was still a child. Murphy finally had value. She quickly took out Shishi's milk bottle from the bag next to her and said, "If you're tired, take a rest. Girls shouldn't be in a hurry to learn these rough things. Take your time. Drink some soy milk first." With Murphy spoiling her, Yang-yi had no choice but to stand aside with his sword. He also spoiled his daughter, but when Shishi practiced martial arts with him alone, she was not so delicate. After learning for less than 5 minutes, The rest time was even longer. She felt that she had rested enough. The little girl grabbed her little wooden sword and skipped over to her father to continue learning. Your hands are sore from practicing just now. The problem is that your way of exerting force is wrong. You have to make full use of your waist to reduce the burden on your wrist. Yang Yi patted his waist with his left hand and gestured to Shi while drawing the sword a little to demonstrate. Yang Yi stopped and gestured to Shi. Try it yourself. Find the frequency and feeling of your waist rotation. The little girl was indeed talented. She could still remember the movement of cutting the flower, and she didn't even need her father to describe it in detail. She twisted her thin waist left and right and gradually found a little feeling. Not bad. You can speed up a little. Yang Yi gave her a look of appreciation. The little girl who was praised by her father immediately showed joy on her face and became more energetic. Let's try to lift the flower. This is the opposite of cutting the flower. It's from the inside out. Yang Yi did the same as before. He first demonstrated and then taught his daughter step by step. She learned very quickly. After a while, she was very proficient in both movements. Okay, it's almost time to go back and have breakfast. Murphy still cared about her daughter and didn't let Yang Yi teach her anymore. Okay then. We'll continue to learn the movements tomorrow. Yang Yi put away the sword and said to Shi with a fist salute. Yes. Shi also held the sword upside down and saluted her father with a fist salute. Shi's figure was taller than her peers. Now that she was mature, she not only looked cool, but also looked like a beautiful girl. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. She held Shi's hand and said softly, Our Shi is smart, right? Your papa has already told Mama that Cici learns things very quickly. Mom is very happy. The little girl was now like a 4-year-old girl. She snuggled in her mother's arms and smiled a little embarrassedly. But Mom doesn't want Shi to be like Papa and only know how to be fierce. Shi has to be a good girl. Learn to play the piano and sing like Mom, okay? Murphy took the opportunity to say. Yang Yi, who was following behind, smiled helplessly. He wasn't very fierce. It was just that he lost control of his emotions that he was fierce to Murphy once. Usually, although he wasn't a mature man who knew how to coax people, he was at least a gentle and good man. Yes. Shi also likes to play the piano. Shi nodded in response. The 3 people bathed in the morning sun, walked through the path filled with the fragrance of flowers, and walked home. Chapter 156. At the end of August, Murphy still had to leave. In the bedroom, Yang Yi helped Murphy fold her clothes and neatly put them in the suitcase. The two of them buried their heads in their work and didn't say a word. Mama, when are you coming back? Cici reluctantly followed behind her mother, as if she was a follower, blindly following her every step. Mom has to go back to take care of some things. She'll be back in a while. She'll definitely send Shi to kindergarten. Murphy turned around and hugged her daughter. This time, the main reason she went back was to explain to Sister Ling about the new album. They had already prepared 12 songs. It was time for Sister Ling to fulfill her promise and put the preparation of Murphy's new album at the highest level of priority. If they started preparing for the new album, Murphy wouldn't need to rush to various cities and reduce the number of commercial performances and announcements. Then Mom, don't leave when you come back in the future, okay? Shi doesn't want you to leave. The little girl pursed her lips and said aggrievedly. Thinking that her mother wasn't by her side, Shi felt very uncomfortable and her big eyes began to fill with tears. Murphy subconsciously glanced at Yang Yi. This blockhead was still lowering his head and helping her pack without saying a word. She pursed her lips and continued to comfort Shi. No matter how reluctant they were, they still had to leave. Mo Xiaojuan's car arrived downstairs early. Murphy carried Shi and Yang Yi followed behind with the suitcase. The two of them were silent as if they had returned to the past. But in fact they didn't. Because when they looked at each other, their eyes didn't have the indifference of the past. They just hid their reluctance and only wanted the other to see their strength. Brother-in-law, it's not a life and death separation. Don't worry, I'll take good care of my sister. Mo Xiaowan opened the trunk and said with a smile. Murphy and her daughter were like a couple who were about to part. They were reluctant to part with each other, and it was difficult for them to say goodbye. Murphy made countless promises and finally managed to coax Shishi. Finally, before getting into the car, Murphy couldn't hold it in any longer. She pouted and walked up to Yang Yi. She lightly kicked the tip of Yang Yi's shoe. "Hey, big blockhead, don't you have anything to say to me?" Yang Yi scratched his head and pondered for a moment before saying, "Take care of yourself. Don't tire yourself out." These concerns made Murphy feel warm in her heart, but she still felt that it was not enough. Of course, Murphy understood Yang Yi's personality and did not force him. Murphy stretched out her hand and pulled out Yang Yi's collar, which he had not spread out properly today, and gently folded it. "Then I'm leaving," Murphy said, but she still couldn't help but remind him, "Take good care of Shishi at home. Also, bathe the cats more often. Feed them cat food and water on time. Don't forget." Yang Yi nodded. Mo Shaowan was in the driver's seat. She rolled down the window and looked at the two guys with great interest. There was a smile in her eyes. "Also, don't be a womanizer. Keep a distance from those girls," Murphy said with her head lowered and gently bit her lower lip. After saying that, she felt embarrassed and wanted to turn around and leave. But suddenly her hand was pulled. It was pulled by a warm, rough hand. Yang Yi pulled Murphy and looked at her. After a few seconds, he took out an envelope from his trouser pocket and gently placed it in Murphy's hand. "What's this?" Murphy felt that her brain was a little short of oxygen at that moment. Yang Yi let go of her hand and scratched his head a little embarrassedly. "A letter. You can read it when you get back." Murphy forgot how she got into the car. She forgot if she had said goodbye to Shishi and Yang Yi. Anyway, in the front passenger seat, she sat in a daze and looked at the envelope in her hand. "Are you serious? Sis, why are you so useless? Brother-in-law wrote you a love letter, and you're so happy that you're confused? Have you never received a love letter before?" Mo Xiaojuan's teasing made Murphy come back to her senses. "Who said I haven't? You little girl, just focus on driving." Mo Fei blushed and said angrily. She had been beautiful since she was young. She did receive a lot of love letters, but because she debuted at a very young age, she didn't spend much time in school. The love letters she received were basically cleared by her agent at the time. Besides, how could other people's love letters be compared to Yang Yi's? While waiting for the traffic light, Mo Shaowan looked over excitedly and said, "Look sis, look at what brother-in-law wrote." Murphy quickly took the envelope in her hand and said, "What? I'm not going to show it to you. Do you have to be so mysterious?" Mo Shaowan pursed her lips and snorted. She said, "But I can't stand you guys. Each of you is more stubborn than the other. You obviously like each other, but you're not willing to take the initiative to confess." "No way," Murphy subconsciously retorted. She then lowered her voice and said, "How can a woman speak first? I think brother-in-law won't speak either." With his personality, Mo Shaowan couldn't help but shake her head. "I really can't stand it. He's more wooden than a block of wood. How can he be more romantic than Mu Ziang? His love songs are so good. I can guarantee that there's nothing mushy in the letter brother-in-law wrote to you. Being a block of wood also has its benefits. Why does he have to be so mushy?" Besides, Murphy couldn't help but want to refute for Yang Yi. She wanted to tell Mo Shaowan about the series of mushy things that Yang Yi did after he said that he wanted to pursue her. However, Murphy was afraid that it was really like what Mo Shaowan said. What if what Yang Yi said in the letter was just ordinary things? Wouldn't that be very embarrassing? Murphy couldn't help but open the letter, wanting to see what was inside. However, when she took out the white letter and opened it, Murphy couldn't help but be stunned. She stared at it blankly for a long time. "What's written?" Mo Shaowan stopped at a traffic light and asked. Murphy's face was red. She hesitated for a moment, but still handed the letter to Mo Shaowan. She felt a little proud. Although she tried her best to hide it, the corners of her mouth still curled up slightly. Mo Shaowan took it and looked. "It's a poem. Brother-in-law can write poems?" She casually read it out. "As long as we love each other once." If we never meet, perhaps our hearts will never be heavy. If we really miss the opportunity, I'm afraid our whole life won't be easy. One look is enough to make the heart sweep past a hurricane on the barren land. Understand the scenery more deeply once on a long journey is enough to haggle a frail heart. Every time I look at the autumn waters, I wish I could tear up. How can death not be unhurried? How can love be indifferent as long as we love each other once? Is a life with no regrets. This poem, Only Loved Each Other Once, was written by Yang Yi's previous life's famous poet, painter Wang Guozhen. However, Yang Yi didn't copy the entire second half of the poem. He only copied the positive part of the first half. When Mo Xiaowan read the poem, it was like plain water, plain and tasteless. It also didn't reflect the charm of the poem. But it didn't matter. On the letter, Yang Yi's simple and elegant small handwriting had already vividly reflected the delicate feelings of the poem. Oh my God, brother-in-law really wrote a love letter, and it's a love poem. Mo Xiaowan exclaimed after reading it. Murphy wanted to laugh, but she didn't want to appear too complacent. She pursed her lips and pretended not to care. It's just a poem. What's so strange about it? I won't be so easily tricked by a poem. Just a poem? Now you get those boys who only know how to send flowers and say mushy words. Let's see who's better than my brother-in-law. Mo Xiaowan changed sides. As long as we love each other once, it's a life with no regrets. Mo Xiaowan repeated the last sentence. She couldn't help but curl her lips. I take back what I said just now. Brother-in-law isn't a blockhead, he's so mushy. All right. Stop reading, it's time to drive. Murphy snatched the letter back, carefully folded it, and put it back into the envelope. She then carefully put it into her bag, afraid that she would break it. Have you eaten breakfast? If you haven't, I'll call Auntie Zhu and ask her to prepare some porridge for you. I'm not eating. Mo Xiaowan drove the car and said weakly, I'm full from your PDA. Chapter 157. The freshmen had to undergo military training, so they had to report earlier than the seniors. On this day, the banners and colorful flags of Jiangqing Media University were fluttering in the wind. The welcoming teams of the various faculties were wearing different colored vests as they gathered with the freshmen and their parents who were full of joy. It was very lively. However, the territory of the School of Business Media was much quieter. After all, they were a small faculty and only had two specializations, electronic media and e-commerce. The Film Academy is still better. Look, there are reporters taking photos. A guy sighed and complained under the tent of the School of Business Media. That's because they have many celebrities. Some are celebrities who got in, and some are future superstars. A girl next to him pouted. She had put on light makeup today, but it was obviously difficult to attract the attention of others. There were many beauties in the Film Academy, and each one was prettier than the other. Long legs, thin waists, oval faces, cherry lips, a perky nose and large eyes. Looking at them once, they would be intoxicated. Looking at them twice, they would fall in love. Every beauty that came to report had killed many reporters. The guys were also excitedly sneaking glances and commenting in low voices. Hey, this one is good. She has good legs. I think she can play with them for a year. What's the use of long legs? I think this one is better. Delicate and exquisite, big eyes. So cute that I want to pinch them. The girl next to him heard and couldn't help but pout. What's so great about big eyes? How many of them are really big? Isn't it the effect of wearing contact lenses? At this moment, the person in charge for the day, Mao Peifu, finally rushed over. She clapped her hands and said, Okay, don't just look. Let's get to work. Da Qing, get someone to go with you to the logistics department and move our water over. Don't really move it. There's a trolley. Borrow one. Lin, you and Xiaoye stay in the base camp on the boat. Register the freshmen and distribute the supplies. Then arrange for the guys to lead the way to the dormitory. Oh right, remember to remind them to do a physical examination. Ding Xiang, and those who had a meeting with us yesterday, follow me. We'll split up according to last night's arrangement, and go to the two school gates to pick up the new students. Mao Peifu commanded in a clean and efficient manner. She was majestic and full of aura. Oh okay. Ding Xiang was the most diligent. She took the lead and picked up a few big signs. The school gate was not as comfortable as the base camp. There was no shade and no place to sit. After a while, a few boys were crying and complaining because of the sun. Hey, can you guys act like men? Do you see how many students our Ding Xiang has received? Each one of you is more lazy than the other. Are you going to shrink back to school if I'm not here? Mao Peifu said snappily. Hee Sister Peifu, Ding Xiang is used to the sun. Look at how dark she is. A guy said shamelessly. Ding Xiang will send the next student to the base camp and dormitory. You guys switch places with her. Mao Peifu said fiercely. Immediately, a wave of cries and shouts rang out. They did not want to stay at the school gate. After sending the students in, they could be lazy. In the middle, they could drink some water in the base camp and sit in the dormitory for a while. This was better than being stared at by Mao Peifu at the school gate. Ding Xiang just turned around. When she heard this, she quickly said, Senior sister, it's okay. What do you mean it's okay? Listen to my arrangements. These guys, let them suffer. Mao Peifu pulled Ding Xiang and said with heartache, Now the men in this world are useless. They don't see themselves as men and still use women as men. The boys beside her smiled bitterly and did not dare to refute. There was no choice. Mao Peifu was pretty. Although she could not be compared to the stars in the film school, she could be said to be the school flower in the School of Business and Media. Although her temper was not good, being beautiful was the truth. While they were talking, a sweaty little fatty dragged a large suitcase, a computer bag, and a large luggage bag as he struggled to get off the bus. After looking around for a while, he saw Mao Peifu's sign. His eyes lit up and he quickly dragged all his things over while panting. Hi, here I am. You're from the School of Business and Media? Ding Xiang asked. Yes. After half a month of floating in Beijing, Guozi did not lose weight, but he was tanned a lot. His original 16-year-old face now looked a lot more mature. I'm from that electronic media major. Just in time. Mao Peifu smiled. Ding Xiang, your direct junior brother. Come give me your sign. Quickly send him over. Senior sister. Ding Xiang could not win against Mao Peifu and her sign was snatched away, but Mao Peifu also casually gave it to a guy with a bitter face. Guozi was a little confused. He felt a little wronged. Is it necessary? Am I that ugly? In any case, I have the face of a star in the fat world. Guozi thought Ding Xiang despised him. All right, let's go to the base camp. I'll bring you to report first. Ding Xiang finally obeyed the arrangement. She walked in front of Guozi and smiled at him, revealing her white and neat teeth. Okay, how should I address you, senior sister? Guozi was big-hearted and fat, so he did not mind at all. He put the luggage bag on top of the suitcase and prepared to push it. However, the luggage bag was too big. Once he pushed the suitcase, it twisted and fell. I'm Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang reached out and took the luggage bag, holding it in her hands. Hey, senior sister, I'll carry this. Guozi was too embarrassed to let a girl carry it for him, so he quickly snatched it. Now, the suitcase fell to the ground. The little fatty stood there stupidly, so awkward. Pfft. Ding Xiang laughed. She did not have the habit of covering her mouth, so she smiled very brightly. All right, I can help you carry it. I'm used to working since I was young, unlike you kids in the city. All right then. Guozi could only drag the suitcase and walk with Ding Xiang. Senior sister, are you the Ding Xiang from Lilac Flower? No, it's Xiang from Xiang province. I'm from there. Oh, senior sister, are you from the Miao tribe? I know there are many villages in Xiang province. Yeah, I grew up in the Miao village since I was young. Hee. Then do you know how to release goo? I heard that when a Miao woman falls in love with someone, she will release goo. If he abandons her, then the goo will help her take revenge. Luckily, they arrived at the base camp in a short while. Otherwise, Guozi might have been smashed flat by Ding Xiang's bags on the road. With the current sun, it might be cooked in a short while. The egg would be cooked. Electronic media major, sign in here to collect your information, Ding Xiang said. Just as Guozi was reporting, there was a commotion at the film academy. A handsome boy was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and even reporters as he was escorted to the reporting area. Chapter 158. Actually, such a commotion was not uncommon. Every year, there would be some famous celebrities admitted to Jiangqing Media University. There was one in the morning, and it was even bigger than this. At that time, it was a small-time female star who had acted in a few TV series. The boys swarmed over like a hornet's nest being poked. However, this handsome boy was a little hard to understand. They had never seen him before. Although he was quite handsome, his hairstyle was styled according to the standards of celebrities, and his skin was soft and tender. He was very popular with the girls of this era. Who is that? Ding Xiang couldn't help but ask. I don't know. I've never seen him before. A girl beside her shook her head. But he's quite handsome. Guazii had just finished signing his name. He looked up and glanced at the boy who was reporting. He pursed his lips without a trace. He had seen this person before. They were in the same group for the arts exam. However, his acting skills were really bad. He was considered skilled, but his face was expressionless. He came and went with a cool expression. At this moment, a girl ran back excitedly. She had joined in the commotion just now. I know who he is. It's Tang Kaitai. Who's Tang Kaitai? Someone was still confused. Tang Kaitai is the former child star. However, his father is more influential. He's now the leader of Xiangnan TV station. When Tang Kaitai was young, he was brought by his father to appear in their children's programs. Later on, he also acted in some TV series. It's only in recent years that he went overseas to further his studies. Oh, so he was reincarnated into a good family. A boy couldn't help but say sourly. Tang Kaitai is also very hardworking. He acted in many films when he was young. I watched him grow up. The girl said shamelessly. You're older than him, right? Her friend exposed her mercilessly. So he had a background. No wonder he could get in with such bad acting skills. Guazii was silent. If it was the old him, he would definitely criticize her, and then use his top score to prove that he was the one who should be admitted to the film academy. However, Guazii had been working hard in Beijing for a while now and had matured a lot. Although he criticized her in his heart, he didn't say it out loud. There were no twists and turns in the base camp. After reporting, Guazii took some of the information handed over by his senior brothers and sisters and found his dormitory. Ding Xiang carried his luggage and sent him off as usual. How embarrassing. Senior Marshal's sister. Actually, I know the way here. I've been to Jiangchuan several times in the past. Just let me go by myself. Guazii really felt bad about letting a girl carry his bag for him. He dragged his suitcase and was about to snatch it from her. You can't carry it yourself. The dormitory is still far away. Ding Xiang refused. Guazii almost tripped over his own feet, but Ding Xiang's eyes were sharp and her hands were quick enough to support him. Guazii didn't expect Ding Xiang to be so strong. Her left hand was able to support him, who was more than 170 kilograms. He even staggered a few steps in a sorry state before he managed to steady himself. Look, let me help you carry it, Ding Xiang said with a smile. Guazii was so ashamed that he wanted to dig into the ground. He had no choice but to accept Ding Xiang's arrangement. In Beijing, director Chen Fengchen, who had obtained the copyright, wasn't in a hurry to hold a press conference. He was still busy filming a historical drama. Although it was almost ending, every project should be finished well. Chen Fengchen still needed to be busy for a few months with filming and post-production. Of course, he didn't completely put these two works aside. Chen Fengchen found his personal scriptwriter and asked him to help change the original novel into a script. At the same time, Chen Fengchen also started to use his various connections to find suitable actors. Even if Yang Yi didn't request, Chen Fengchen, who liked to strive for perfection, would still choose the most suitable actor for his own film. All of this was carried out in full swing. Chen Fengchen didn't look like a 60-year-old man at all. He was full of energy and devoted himself to his work. In Jiangcheng, at Tianmei's headquarters, Murphy brought Mo Shaowan and knocked on Sister Ling's door. Murphy, you're back? How was your vacation? Niu Meiling was still smiling. There was another person sitting in her office. Jianchua. Zhenmuqian's manager. Mo Xiaowan and the other person's eyes met. The smell of gunpowder was very strong. Sister Ling, everything is fine. Murphy smiled at Niu Meiling. Oh right, Sister Ling, I have something to tell you. Just like before, Murphy didn't like to be polite. Sister Ling, do you want me to go out first? Jianchua pushed her chair and stood up. It's fine. Jianchua isn't an outsider. If you have something to say, just say it. Niu Meiling said with a smile. Murphy didn't feel anything, but Mo Xiaowan slightly frowned. She noticed that Sister Ling's attitude towards Murphy was different. However, now wasn't the time to worry about this problem. Mo Xiaowan opened the folder in her hand and said to Niu Meiling, Sister Ling, before you said that if we prepared 12 songs, we would start preparing a new album for Murphy. That's right. What are you guys doing? Niu Meiling looked at Murphy and Mo Xiaowan with slight surprise. Mo Xiaowan faintly smiled. She took out a piece of paper from the folder and pushed it in front of Niu Meiling. Now that we have prepared 12 songs, I'll have to trouble Sister Ling to tell everyone at tomorrow's meeting to put Murphy's new album on the agenda. 12 songs. This exclamation came from Jianchua. She looked at Mo Xiaowan in disbelief. That's right. Mo Xiaowan charmingly smiled at the other party. In Jianchua's eyes, Mo Xiaojuan's smile was full of malice. She was very unhappy and said sourly, 12 songs in such a short time. Who knows if they were randomly found in the Copyright Association's library? Sister Ling, if they're all bad songs, then this album might as well not be released. Niu Meiling didn't make a move. She just looked at Mo Xiaowan. We didn't randomly gather 12 songs. Mo Xiaowan proudly said, Sister Ling, the song list I gave you has the names of the songwriters. Niu Meiling frowned and looked down. It was all Muziang. Muziang. Niu Meiling didn't react for a moment. Muziang? That Muziang? Jianchua's face changed. The Muziang who wrote 2 songs for Chen Yijie? Hee, that's right. Mo Xiaowan raised her head and proudly said, Muziang is our Sister Fei's fan. He wrote 12 songs for Sister Fei in one go, and every one of them is a masterpiece. Xiaowan. Murphy felt that Mo Xiaowan was a bit too complacent and reprimanded her. Even so, looking at Mo Xiaojuan's proud look, Niu Meiling and Jianchua knew that what they said was true. Sister Ling, you know that I've always been a very serious person when it comes to music. Murphy looked at Niu Meiling and said sincerely, Fortunately, we have the help of an excellent composer like Mu Ziang. The 12 songs are all of good quality. I believe that after this album is released, it won't let you down. Niu Meiling forced a smile and said, Okay Murphy, have you recorded the demo? Yes. Mo Xiaowan was already prepared. She took out a disc and handed it over. You guys go back first. I'll listen to the song and give you an answer tomorrow, okay? Niu Meiling said kindly. Murphy nodded and left with Mo Xiaowan. Chapter 159. After she left, Niu Meiling and Jianchua looked at each other speechlessly. It was Jianchua who spoke first. She said unhappily, Sister Ling, this Mo Xiaowan is too much. Just because she's Murphy's relative, she doesn't care about us at all. Compared to Murphy and Mo Xiaowan, Jianchua, who had been brought up by Niu Meiling, was more like one of them. Niu Meiling shook her head and said, Let's not talk about her. When the contract is renewed next year, I'll give Murphy a personal assistant. Mo Xiaowan can just focus on being her personal assistant. Jianchua's eyes fell on the CD on Niu Meiling's desk. Her expression changed and she said, Sister Ling, let's listen to her song. Let's see if it's the real Mu Ziang. After Mo Fei spoke, Niu Meiling actually already had an answer in her heart. She also knew that Mo Fei rarely lied, but she still obeyed and handed the CD to Jianchua. Jianchua turned on the sound system that was embedded in the wall behind her and played it. When the first song was played, Niu Meiling and Jianchua looked at each other in surprise. When the second song was played, they no longer had any doubts about Mu Ziang's identity. The third song, before they finished listening, Niu Meiling had already stood up and turned off the sound system. Her face was gloomy. Sister Ling, this is going to be difficult. Jianchua said carefully. Neo Miling sighed heavily. I originally wanted to suppress her, but now with these songs, she's going to soar again. Jianchua said unhappily. How can this person be so lucky? Why doesn't my Zhenzhen have a fan named Muziang? Neo Miling also had a headache. She wanted to take advantage of the last year of the contract to force Murphy to sign a new contract. Even Jianchua didn't know that the reason why Murphy's album was so bad was because she had done something during the process of collecting the songs. Her wings have hardened. She's going to fly. Neo Miling murmured, her eyes flashing with a strange light. Sister Ling, you said that almost every one of these 12 songs is very good. They can even be used as a main song for others. Jianchua's eyes also flickered as she said, why don't we share a few songs? For example, this Crossing the Ocean to See You. I think it's very suitable for our Zhenzhen's sweet voice. Neo Miling frowned and looked at her. Jianchua chuckled. He wasn't afraid at all. He leaned over and whispered in Neo Miling's ear. Anyway, this song was written by Mu Ziang. If it's sent to our company, it will belong to our company. Give Zhenzhen a few songs. This and that won't just sit there and watch. Everyone should be distributed. No matter what, we can reduce Murphy's chances of making a comeback. Neo Miling narrowed her eyes and thought for a while. She waved her hand and asked Jianchua to come closer. I'll leave this to you. Do it well. Sister Ling, I say, if you want to do it, let's just do it. Jianchua said boldly. Didn't Murphy say that her fans wrote a song for her? Those documents should be sent back and forth by email. Let's bypass them and find Mu Ziang. Or we can use Murphy's tone to send an email to Mu Ziang and ask him to authorize our company. Neo Miling's eyes lit up. She patted Jianchua and said, let's do it. You go to the technical department. I'll call them later and ask them to fully cooperate with you. Yang Yi was about to email Chang Zi the high-definition illustration of the prison break that night. He didn't expect to receive an email from Murphy, but the wording was a bit strange. The beginning was Dear Mu Ziang. This was a tone that had never been used before. Moreover, between the lines, it always gave people the feeling of a little girl acting coquettishly to her lover. This definitely wasn't Murphy. Yang Yi was too familiar with Murphy. With her personality, how could she act coquettishly? It shouldn't be Mo Xiaowan either. These days Yang Yi had been chatting with Murphy. He knew that Mo Xiaowan was in control of her email account. She usually used it to deal with work. But Mo Xiaowan had never been so disgusting. Although this woman didn't treat Yang Yi well, and she was also a bit pretentious, she was definitely a proud and arrogant person. Her coldness came from her bones, which was exactly the opposite of Mo Fei. She probably wouldn't be able to act like a spoiled child in front of Mu Ziang. More importantly, when Mo Xiaowan sent him an email without Murphy's knowledge, she didn't act coquettishly like this. There's a problem. Yang Yi frowned and looked at the attachment on the computer. It was an electronic authorization letter from the Copyright Association. It indicated that the right to use the song was not authorized to Murphy, but to Tianmei Entertainment Company. He picked up his phone and dialed Mo Xiaojuan's number, not caring what time it was. The phone rang for a long time before it was picked up. In the end, Mo Xiaojuan's vague scolding came crashing down on him. Hey, who is it? Did you see what time it is? I want to sleep. Sure enough, Mo Xiaowan didn't remember Yang Yi's phone number. In the past, she probably didn't want to remember because she found it disgusting. Now she probably didn't need it and forgot. I'm Yang Yi. Yang Yi had to introduce himself. If he didn't say anything, Mo Xiaowan would probably hang up. Hey brother-in-law, why are you calling me in the middle of the night? You have money? Mo Xiaowan asked excitedly. Now, she was looking forward to Yang Yi's money to start a company. Oh, it hasn't arrived yet. I'll have to wait a few days. Yang Yi was referring to the money from selling the film rights of the 2 books. Oh, Mo Xiaowan was disappointed when she heard that. She gave a perfunctory reply. I wanted to ask you, did you guys go back to the company today? Yang Yi asked. We went back to talk to Sister Ling. Mo Xiaowan said lazily. However, since the conversation had started, Mo Xiaowan continued. This woman has a problem. I don't know what she's doing. She clearly said that she would release a new album for Sister Faye once we gathered 12 songs. But she dragged it out and said that we'll talk about it tomorrow. But that's good. Tomorrow, I want to see their faces and let everyone be shocked. It's only 12 songs. I can gather them all. Mo Shawan said proudly. Yang Yi roughly understood. He casually said a few words and hung up. When Mo Shawan hung up, she was still a little confused. She muttered to herself. Is there a problem? This person? Who would call their sister-in-law in the middle of the night? Could it be? After Yang Yi put down his phone, he coldly looked at the email on his computer. Murphy's situation was not good. The people in the company were scheming against each other, and she was also being dealt with by despicable means. Fortunately, the other party had bumped into him, and had been careful. He had to quickly earn money and let Mo Shawan set up the studio. He had to save Murphy from the sea of bitterness as soon as possible. Of course, the first thing to do was to think of a way to fight back. They actually dared to trick my Murphy. Yang Yi decided that he would not let them have an easy time. Immediately, Yang Yi had an idea. However, he had to buy a new SIM card tomorrow. Chapter 160. Early in the morning, Yang Yi was confused by Shishi. The little girl was very angry when she got up. She hugged her father's neck tightly and cried. She was so sad that she couldn't control herself. What's wrong? Tell me, why are you crying? Yang Yi comforted her with a headache and asked in confusion. After a while, Shishi sobbed in her father's arms and said, My sweetheart is missing. Sweetheart was missing? When did that happen? Yang Yi remembered that when he came back from exercise in the morning, he made cat food and fed the kittens on the balcony. When he called them, they ran out from every corner. How is it missing? Aren't they fine at home? Yang Yi asked. I saw sweetheart leave in a car, the little girl said with tears in her eyes and a pout. Yang Yi understood. He smiled and rubbed his daughter's little head and said, That's because you were dreaming. Come, now that you're awake, Dad will take you to see the kittens. In the living room, Yang Yi smiled and gently held Shishi's little hand. He pointed and said, Come Shishi, look, aren't the kittens playing over there? The big little gray climbed up to the top of the cat tree and reached out to play with the hanging fluffy ball. But Shidu was docile. It lay on the middle, squinting its eyes and not moving. Shishi opened her big red and swollen eyes and looked carefully for a while. She felt wronged again. My sweetheart is not here, it's missing. Yang Yi looked at his daughter's big eyes and said quickly, No, sweetheart must be at home. Come, Dad will look for it for you. In the past few days, Yang Yi had bought cat books to read. He almost understood the habits of cats, so he went to those small corners to look for it. After a while he found it. Shishi, come here. Look, Xiao Guai is here. Yang Yi half knelt on the ground and waved at Shishi with a smile. The little girl was overjoyed. She quickly wiped her tears and ran over. Sure enough, she saw the kitten that had drilled into the small gap between the armrest of the sofa. The little guy was still secretly observing with his sparkling eyes. Xiao Guai, come out quickly. You almost scared me to death. Shishi pouted and called out. As Shishi had played with the kitten for a long time, Xiao Guai still came out when it saw her. Fortunately, Yang Yi didn't let go of these blind spots when he was cleaning at home, so the kitten didn't get any dust on its body. Otherwise, Yang Yi would never let Shishi hold the kitten. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile at the sight of Shishi hugging Xiao Guai so happily as if she had accomplished something great. Tianmei Entertainment. Today was the regular meeting for the week. Unless they couldn't leave, almost all the managers, including some artists who didn't have any jobs, had returned to the company to prepare for the meeting. Mo Shawan was also in Mo Fei's office, helping Mo Fei with her hair. You have to dress up beautifully today, and then appear on the stage in a dazzling manner. You have to blind their dog eyes. Thinking about how those people had called Murphy an old woman, Mo Shawan was very angry. Of course, Mo Shawan wouldn't tell Murphy about these unhappy things. However, Murphy was a little absent-minded. After Mo Shawan was done, she picked up her phone and couldn't wait to open the message that had just rung. To be exact, it was a multimedia message. Mo Shawan saw it and pursed her lips unhappily. She felt that the daily PDA was really too much for her. Brother-in-law sent you something again? Is it a comic this time? Or a love letter? Actually, there was no need to ask. Looking at Murphy's happy smile, Mo Shawan knew that it was a comic. Yesterday, Yang Yi had sent a comic. Mo Shawan had seen it before. It was a little person holding up a crab, and the crab's pincers were in the shape of two hearts. The style was very rough and there was nothing redeeming about it. But with Yang Yi's handwritten words at the bottom, even a crab is in the shape of love for you. Mo Shawan felt that it was so mushy that she was about to have goosebumps. Let alone Mo Shawan, no one in this world had seen such an emoticon style before, so it looked very fresh. Of course, this kind of straightforwardness was also quite surprising. What would it be today? Mo Shawan originally refused to eat dog food, but she couldn't help but go over to take a look. Murphy happily shared it with her. She saw that it was still the ugly little person. This time, 2 dots were drawn as nostrils, and it looked even uglier. However, the little person's head was drawn with different sizes of hearts, and it was even painted with a pink color. Breathing the air of love for you every day. Mo Shawan read out the beautiful fountain pen words below, and couldn't help but learn a northeastern dialect. Oh my God, this person, is there no end to it? Murphy covered her mouth and snickered at the side. Mo Shawan pouted and stuffed the phone back to Murphy. She said unhappily, I'm not looking anymore. You two can continue being lovey-dovey there. I'm speechless. I'm so disgusted by you two. Murphy giggled. In order not to agitate her single cousin, she didn't respond. However, she liked it very much. During this period, Yang Yi had been writing to her, and she kept all the things he sent her. She often secretly looked at them, and she felt full of energy all day long. Mo Shawan. What else can I do? With this cousin, I'm also very desperate to eat dog food every day. Ding dong. At this moment, Mo Xiaojuan's phone received a text message. Of course, Mo Shawan wouldn't receive any romantic text messages from men. Most of them were work-related, so Mo Shawan subconsciously picked up her phone and glanced at it. It was an unfamiliar number. However, the content of the message shocked her. I'm Mu Xiang. Open the email below and look at my new email. Mu Xiang sent her a text message? How did Mu Xiang know her number? Oh yes, it was in her signature at the bottom of her previous emails. But why did Mu Xiang suddenly want her to look at the email? And he even gave her a new email and password? Mo Xiaojuan's head was full of question marks. Shawan, are you done? We have to go to the meeting. Murphy looked at the time and said. Mo Shawan sat in front of the computer and bent down to turn it on. Why are you turning on the computer? Murphy was confused. Mo Shawan waited for the computer to turn on and said unhappily. Sis, why are you in such a hurry? Every time we have a meeting, you're always the first to arrive. Don't you look like a big sister? What's a big sister? A big sister is someone who wants everyone to wait for her and has to put on airs. Murphy shook her head and said, No, I don't like to make others wait for me. Also, why do I have to put on airs as a big sister? Then I don't want to be a big sister. Mo Shawan rolled her eyes. She couldn't continue chatting with her cousin who was sometimes as stubborn as a cow. Chapter 161. Just as Murphy was about to go to the meeting, a familiar customer came to Yang Yi's coffee shop. Brother Yang, I Fatty Guo am back. Guozi, who was wearing a green military uniform, shouted excitedly as he pushed open the glass door. Yang Yi smiled and nodded in response. Shishi waved at Guozi happily. Uncle Guo, come here, let me show you my little Guai. Guozi just realized that there were 3 more kittens in the shop. He was also someone who likes small animals, so he ran over and sat on the sofa, playing with the kittens with Shishi. This is little Guai. Yours is Papa's Dodo. Shishi pointed at the little blue cat in Guozi's hand that was twisting restlessly. Shishi also enthusiastically took out her little Guai and let Guozi touch it. She even looked at Guozi eagerly, wanting him to praise her kitten. You've gotten a lot more tanned. Yang Yi made a cup of coffee for Guozi and said casually. Hee hee, of course, I went to Beijing to shoot a movie. Every day, I was exposed to the sun and rain. Sigh, Brother Yang, you don't know how hard it was. Guizi complained. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll be dragged to military training. Sigh, I didn't come back for nothing. Yang Yi smiled and said, isn't it good to get a bit more tanned? You're always so delicate. How can a man be so delicate? Also, I don't think you're tanned enough. It's good that you'll be worn down during military training. Guizi rolled his eyes. He seriously doubted Yang Yi's taste. Actually, Brother Yang, I came to report yesterday, but I didn't come to play with you last night. Do you know why? Guizi said excitedly. Guess where I went? Where did you go? Yang Yi was unmoved. You're not even guessing, how boring. Guizi felt very unhappy. However, he quickly adjusted himself and immediately said with a smile, I went to the bar to play and pestered a senior sister. She was working part-time at the bar, so I followed her and became her bodyguard. Are you going to have fun? Yang Yi raised his head and looked at Guizi. With your skills, who can you beat? He's even a bodyguard. If Guizi could understand that phrase, he would definitely shout, Don't expose me, my brother. After finishing his coffee, Guizi had no intention of staying for dinner. He chuckled and said, All right, Brother Yang, I still have to help senior sister welcome the new students. I won't chat with you anymore. See you when I come back from military training. Although Guizi could be considered a warm-hearted person, his so-called helping senior sister welcome the newcomers was definitely not wholeheartedly helping. What else could there be? Of course, he wasn't referring to Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang was dark and skinny. She didn't fit Guizi's aesthetic standards. His goal was, of course, the Film Academy, Music Academy, and other schools with a high proportion of female students. Taking advantage of the new students' enrollment, he had to quickly determine the distribution of the new students' resources. Although in terms of age, they were all his older sisters. At Tianmei's conference room, Murphy and Mo Shaowan walked in at about the same time. There were quite a few people present, and there were also some empty seats. Sister Ling naturally hadn't arrived yet. Mo Fei's appearance still caused a small sensation. There were some small artists who looked at her with admiration, and there were also some people who had complicated expressions in their eyes. Among them was Zhenzhen, a young, beautiful, and delicate female singer of the new generation. She was staring at Mo Fei with longing in her eyes. There was also a trace of jealousy hidden deep within. Yesterday, Jianchua had already told her about the matter. After Zhenzhen heard Murphy's demo, she was so jealous that she almost wanted to throw her recordings into the trash can. The difference was too big. If there was only one good song, it would be fine. But with 12 songs, every one of them was a masterpiece. How could others live? I'll try my best to get Coming Across the Ocean to See You and a few other songs for you. Jianchua comforted her. Zhenzhen looked at her manager and asked ambitiously, Why don't you snatch all of them? Anyway, snatching one or two songs is the same as snatching all of them. Of course, it was good to think about it. Zhenzhen's position wasn't stable yet. There was a group of people coveting it behind her. Jianchua also used the same words to persuade Niu Meiling to dispel Zhenzhen's thoughts. But now, looking at Murphy, Zhenzhen couldn't help but feel jealous. Why don't I have a good fan? Why does she get all the good things? Zhenzhen's gaze and some people's whispers didn't affect Murphy. She sat in her seat as if she didn't feel anything. Mo Shaowan sat behind her with a briefcase tightly clamped between her legs. Not long after, Niu Meiling arrived. She had a meeting as usual and talked about the company's recent situation and achievements. She also praised some of the small stars who had made breakthroughs. Sister Ling's public praise was sometimes more useful than winning some awards. Looking at their excited expressions, Mo Shaowan secretly curled her lips. You've never seen the world. Just as Mo Shaowan was waiting anxiously and wanted to ask if she should talk about Murphy's new album, Niu Meiling finally said, Let's talk about Murphy's new album now. Murphy's new album? Didn't it just come out? Many small stars and managers who weren't qualified to hear the news were suddenly in an uproar. They looked at each other excitedly and started discussing. Ahem. Quiet. This time Niu Meiling interfered. The main reason I gave Murphy a new album was because I promised before that as long as Murphy could save up 12 songs, I would agree to give her the resources to produce a new album. I didn't expect Murphy to be so capable. She actually found Mu Xiang and wrote 12 songs for her. Tisk tsk. Niu Meiling's tone was a little cold. She even seemed to be mocking and ridiculing. Mu Xiang. She only wrote 2 songs for Chen Yijie and 12 songs for us. Every one of them is wonderful. Mu Xiang. At this moment, after Niu Meiling's reminder, everyone remembered the meaning of this name. Suddenly, there was another uproar. The way they looked at Mo Fei was filled with admiration, shock, and of course envy, jealousy, and hatred. Niu Meiling waited for everyone to quiet down a little before she laughed and said, I, Niu Meiling, am famous in the industry for being a man of my word. Since I've agreed to something, I can't go back on my words, right? Murphy sat there and smiled. She felt that this Sister Ling was still the same person she knew. She still treated her well. My dear sister, you're such a sweet and naive girl. Mo Shaoan, who was sitting behind, saw Murphy's reaction clearly. She couldn't help but secretly curl her lips. It's about time for her to give herself away, right? Sure enough, Mo Shaoan, who had been watching from the corner of her eye, stood up. Sister Ling, I'm sorry. I have a few words to say. What does Jian Chao want to say? Jian Chua smiled slightly, looked around and said, Yesterday I listened to Mo Fei's demo with Sister Ling. What Sister Ling said was not wrong at all. These 12 songs, each one of them is very exciting. It can be said that any one of these songs can be the main title of any album under Tianmei. Then, isn't it a bit of a waste to put all 12 songs on one album? Jian Chao revealed her true intentions. She ignored Murphy's shocked expression and said to Niu Meiling, Sister Ling, there are so many people in our company who are looking forward to releasing a new album to make a name for themselves, including our Zhenzhen. Zhenzhen is also taking jobs day and night. We just want to see when we can make a name for ourselves. Why don't we allocate our resources reasonably and divide these 12 songs among ourselves and give our company a few more big stars? Isn't that a better thing? Jian Chua smiled. Chapter 162. What do you mean? Niu Meiling asked. How do we split it? Sister Ling's reaction wasn't to reprimand, but to be more interested in understanding. Mo Fei was so surprised that she only looked at Niu Meiling closely. She still had a glimmer of hope that Sister Ling might object later. What I mean is, isn't our Zhenzhen also preparing her new album? Why don't Zhenzhen take out 3 or 4 songs from her album and exchange it with Murphy? Jian Chao smiled. Anyway, there are so many classic songs. It doesn't matter if there are a few missing, but it will be of great help to our Zhenzhen. Zhen Muqian stood up cooperatively with a warm smile on his face. He smiled intimately. Zhenzhen wants to thank Sister Murphy for her help. Help your head. Mo Shaoan vomited in her heart. She felt that this woman was really hypocritical. She even acted out a palace drama. As soon as Zhen Muqian's voice fell, several agents who had already discussed this matter with each other also stood up one after another and began to compete for songs for their artists. One song after another, it was as if Mo Fei had opened a supermarket here. RUU hasn't released an album yet, but it's scheduled for next year. Can you leave a song for RUU? When RUU becomes famous, she will definitely be grateful to everyone. Even though they hadn't made an agreement, some small artists' agents couldn't help but speak up. Ahem, everyone quiet down. If we decide to do this, the company will definitely allocate these resources reasonably. Even if we can't, we can ask Mr. Mu Xiang to write a few more songs for us. Niu Meiling smiled with a red face. Finally, she seemed to have thought of Murphy. She turned her head and looked at Murphy. She smiled and asked, Murphy, what do you think of Jian Chao's proposal? Of course, the company won't treat you unfairly. We will do our best to help you collect songs and fill the remaining gaps. Murphy's pretty face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. Her entire person exuded a cold aura. She really didn't expect that Sister Ling wouldn't speak up for her. No. Murphy stared at Sister Ling for a long time before saying word by word, This is my song. Jianchua laughed. Yes, it's your song, but aren't you also part of the company? You have to listen to the company's arrangements. Besides, the company didn't say that they won't release an album for you. If you take a step back, won't the company give you more resources to help you make the album better and do more publicity? Murphy is so angry that she has clenched her fists under the table. She is not the kind of person who likes to quarrel with people loudly. Otherwise, she will really open her mouth to scold. How shameless! Mo Xiaowan scolded on her behalf. Mo Xiaowan, who are you talking about? Jianchua was caught off guard. I'm scolding you, and I'm scolding you for taking advantage of my misfortune. Mo Xiaowan stood up and confronted Jianchua across the table. She shouted angrily, "These songs were written by Mu Xiang for our Murphy. What right do you have to snatch them?" Mo Xiaowan still wanted to continue scolding. I think if jealousy is a disease, I'm afraid you'll all be lying in the hospital. Murphy tugged at Mo Xiaowan's clothes, but this time she didn't let Mo Xiaowan give up. Instead, she said softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "It seems like jealousy is a disease." She was very serious, as if discussing a scientific question. The conference room was silent. After a while, Niu Meiling coughed and tried to smooth things over. "You can't say that. The company is only thinking about the big picture and allocating so many high-quality songs. Murphy, you have to understand Sister Ling's difficulties." Murphy shook her head. She suppressed her emotions and said, "No, Sister Ling, I'm not stupid. These songs were not collected by the company for me. We asked Mu Xiang to write the songs, but we didn't use the company's connections or the company's funds. When did it become the company's resources?" Jianchua scolded, "Murphy, you're too arrogant. Aren't you people from the company? Do you still listen to the company's arrangements?" Then she gritted her teeth and showed her unfinished trump card. "As far as I know, you didn't sign a contract with Mu Xiang. Mu Xiang didn't say that these songs were written for you." "Oh, how did you know?" Mo Xiaowan laughed and asked sarcastically. "This." Jianchua was at a loss for words, but she still found a lie. "You're not the only one who knows about Mu Xiang. We naturally have his contact information." "Oh." Mo Xiaowan laughed and said, "Mu Xiang didn't say that these songs were written for us. Did he write them for the company?" Jianchua braced herself and said, "That's right. We contacted Mu Xiang last night and prepared to sign these 12 songs with him under the company's name. So these 12 songs will belong to the company's resources." Jianchua saw the surprise on Murphy's face, but she was disappointed because she didn't see the panic on Mo Xiaojuan's face. Mo Xiaojuan's expression was very calm, so calm that she felt that something was wrong. "If that's the case, Murphy, you'll have to suffer a little. But don't mind it. How could Sister Ling let you suffer? I promise to invest the most resources for you and let your new album become a hit," Niu Meiling said with a smile. Murphy couldn't tell if she was sad, disappointed, or desperate. But her expression was still cold, and no one could see any fluctuations. Zhenzhen was still very young. She was very nervous just now, but now she was finally relieved. She smiled proudly and felt that the situation was settled. However, Mo Xiaowan smiled. She turned around and picked up her briefcase from the chair behind her. She took out a stack of printed papers and waved them in front of him. "I'm afraid you'll have to take a look at this," Mo Xiaowan said proudly. "This is the electronic authorization letter that Mu Xiang sent to us, and it clearly states that Murphy is the beneficiary of the right to sing these 12 songs, and she's the only one authorized." Murphy was a little surprised. She saw Mo Xiaowan print out these printed papers before the meeting, but she was so focused on the things that Yang Yi sent her that she didn't pay attention to what it was. Mu Xiang sent them an electronic authorization letter? How come she didn't know? Jianchua's eyes widened. She quickly grabbed it and looked at it. The format was exactly the same as the one she sent to Mu Xiang last night. Of course, it was also the standard template of the copyright organization, but Mu Xiang signed the electronic seal, and the party beyond it changed from Tianmei Entertainment to Murphy, and there was an additional note. If it's not our Murphy singing these songs, this authorization will be considered invalid. Mo Xiaowan kindly reminded her. The copyright organization will punish the infringer severely. Niu Meiling looked at Jian Chua with a puzzled look, but the latter could only smile bitterly. Well, we can discuss this with Mu Xiang, right? Murphy, I think you should take the overall situation into consideration, Niu Meiling said with a laugh. I won't. Mo Fei shook her head firmly. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the conference room became awkward. Hee. Mo Shaoan didn't intend to let Jian Chua go. She stretched out her finger, pointed at Jian Chua, and said with a smile, "This problem is actually very easy to solve. Doesn't Jian Chua know Mu Xiang? Let her ask Mu Xiang to write a few more songs, then we'll have enough to share. Does she need to look at our Murphy's songs so eagerly?" Jian Chua's mood was very complicated at the moment. She was bitter, angry, and helpless. But facing Mo Xiaozhuan's provocation, she really had something to say, but she didn't know whether to say it or not. Chapter 163. In the end, Niu Meiling was still Sister Ling. She smoothly resolved the awkward situation in front of her. It's okay. Since Mr. Mu Xiang has already stated that it has to be Murphy, then we still have to respect the wishes of the composer. Anyway, it's Murphy's turn to sing. Keeping the goodies within the family is something to be happy about. Ha ha ha, yes, Sister Ling is right. Jian Chua awkwardly smiled and sat down. Sister Chow. Zhenzhen couldn't hold it in. She anxiously tugged at Jian Chua's clothes as she watched the duck fly away. However, how could Jian Chua be in the mood to comfort her? Niu Meiling acted calmly, as if nothing had happened just now. She waved her hand in a very imposing manner, made a conclusion and said, "Okay, no matter what, your Sister Ling still means what she says. Sister Ling, from today onwards, the planning department, the public relations department, all departments pay attention to me. Mobilize resources, record recordings, shoot the MV, and the early stage hype. Mo Fei's new album must be put into action." Murphy looked at Sister Ling. It was as if the ice had melted a little, as she gently nodded her head. However, only she knew that today's matter had left a grudge in her heart. The unfamiliar Sister Ling that made her tremble was no longer the same person she remembered. After the meeting was adjourned, Murphy and Mo Shaoan were speechless the entire way. When they returned to their office, Mo Shaoan proudly showed off to her cousin. "Sister, you don't know. I've been unhappy with that Jian Chua for a long time. Today, I can finally give her a slap in the face. It's too satisfying." Murphy shook her head. She sat down tiredly and said, "I didn't expect Sister Ling to help them. I really didn't expect it. It's too disappointing." Mo Shaoan rolled her eyes and said, "Sister, why are you still so naive? Can't you see that Sister Ling is acting? If it wasn't for Sister Ling's nod, would Jian Chua dare to steal our songs so blatantly? Maybe this was arranged by Sister Ling." "It can't be?" Murphy deeply frowned and hesitated for a moment before saying, "How can it not be? Wasn't Jian Chua there yesterday?" In the end, something like this happened in a meeting, and so many people followed suit. I don't believe that there's nothing fishy going on behind the scenes. Mo Shaoan waved her hand and said. And I also specially observed Sister Ling's expression. This Niu Meiling. I didn't see any surprise on her face from beginning to end. She clearly already knew. Mo Shaoan said angrily. No matter what, since things have come to this, let's not pursue the matter any further. If things get out of hand, we won't be able to be friends anymore. Murphy tugged at Mo Shaoan and tried to persuade her. Who wants to be friends with her? Sister, let me tell you, if it wasn't for Mu Xiang's vigilance, we would have fallen into their trap. Mo Shaoan said hatefully. Yes, you printed those agreements before the meeting. I forgot to ask you. Did Mu Xiang ask you to make the call? What's going on? Murphy asked curiously. Mo Shaoan proudly pulled Mo Fei to the computer, took out her phone, and explained to Mo Fei, I received a text message from an unknown number this morning. It was from Mu Xiang. He told me that there was a problem, so he asked me to log in to a newly registered email address. Then he sent an email to that email address. The attachment was our stack of authorization, and there were also a few screenshots. Look, I don't know who used our email account to send an email to Mu Xiang, and the content was so mushy. Later, I checked our email account, and the traces were cleaned up, but I guessed it was done by someone from the company. Luckily, it was too mushy. Mu Xiang knew something was wrong, so he sent us the authorization. Mo Xiaowan proudly said. I'll just hide it and wait for Jian Chua, that bitch, to give her a slap in the face. Murphy frowned and looked at the email carefully. She was relatively calm, so she saw a problem. Xiaowan, how do you think Mu Xiang knew that Sister Ling and the others wanted to steal our song? Mo Xiaowan hadn't considered this question before. Now that Murphy brought it up, she scratched her head. Yeah, how did he know? Maybe it was because we don't know who sent the email, so Mu Xiang figured it out. Mo Xiaowan guessed. That email didn't give much information. Mo Xiaowan shook her head. Write that phone number. Have you contacted Mu Xiang? No matter what, he helped us so much. We should thank him. Mo Xiaowan spread her hands and helplessly said. No, I tried calling back, but the phone was turned off. I tried a few times. Why didn't he pick up? Murphy frowned. I don't know. This person is so mysterious. It's like he's afraid that we know him. Mo Xiaowan curled her lips. Afraid? Murphy seemed to have caught a clue. Yeah. Chen Yijie has seen him. We told him a few times, but he didn't want to show up. Mo Xiaowan snorted. Murphy seemed to have been possessed by Conan in that instant and blurted out. Maybe it's because we know him? Mo Xiaowan snickered. Could it be that he's also a member of our company? But the possibility is too small. Actually, I'm more willing to believe that he's too ugly and doesn't want to show up. Murphy was led astray by her. She smiled and patted her head. Don't talk about others like that. After all, he's our benefactor. While they were talking and laughing, Niu Miling's office was filled with dark clouds. Sister Ling, Mo Xiaowan and Murphy have really grown up. You can't indulge them. Jian Chua exclaimed. Sai Zhenjin just cried to me for a long time. She said that she still wants to sing Coming Across the Ocean to See You. She can't bear to do it. Go tell Murphy. If she agrees, I have no objections, Niu Miling said coldly. Jian Chua changed her mind. She laughed and said, Nah, I was just teaching her a lesson. How could there be such a good thing nowadays? Murphy, that be *TCH, is so stingy. She eats meat and doesn't give others soup. Niu Miling snorted. Sister Ling, are you going to release Murphy's new album for her just like that? If it's a hit, the next time we sign a contract, we'll have to sign a top contract. What money are we going to earn? Jian Chua said carefully. Niu Miling frowned and didn't respond. Why don't we just give her some resources? Anyway, whether she can become a hit or not depends on her luck. Jian Chua instigated. Zhenjun is also going to release a new album. You should put in more effort. Zhenjun is such a good child. Even if she becomes a hit, she won't forget her roots. Moreover, her contract still has 4 to 5 years. If we push her out, our company's interests will be the greatest. Niu Miling looked at Jian Chua deeply and saw through her selfishness. However, this statement wasn't wrong. In terms of return, it was better to push a new person up than to let Murphy, who had signed a top contract, do the same. Chapter 164. Soft music and soft light made today's coffee shop seem extra warm. As the students returned to school, Yang Yi's business began to gradually become lively. However, his focus was still on Shishi. The little girl was like a leader, running around the shop while giggling, and behind her were 3 kittens. The 3 kittens were at an age where they were full of the desire to explore the world, and the energetic little girl was their best playmate. Papa, I want to go to the amusement park and ride the bumper cars, the little girl said while panting slightly and drinking the milk made by her father. She wasn't very tired playing with the kittens, but she was sweating a little, and a few strands of hair stuck to her delicate little face. Yang Yi took out her towel and wiped the sweat on the little girl's face. Then he took out a dry towel and stuffed half of it into Shishi's back, and the other half hung on her little vest. Didn't you go to play a while ago? Yang Yi smiled and said, You can't go every day, you have to go every once in a while. Okay, then next time we have to bring Xiao Guai, Xiao Hui, and Dondo together? Shishi tilted her little head and thought for a while, then said, they will be obedient. This was a big problem. Could pets be allowed in the amusement park? However, Yang Yi still nodded to his daughter calmly. If it wasn't allowed, then they wouldn't bring them? In front of Yang Yi, whether or not to follow the rules was just a matter of mood. We have an activity tonight. Let's pick up your mother first, then we'll go shopping for clothes and school bags, Yang Yi said to his daughter. Shishi was about to enter school, and Murphy discussed with Yang Yi that they would prepare everything for Shishi tonight. She had just finished dealing with the company's affairs, and she didn't have to rush for work for the time being. Shishi was at such a critical moment, so she had to accompany her. Of course, if Murphy also went shopping, Yang Yi still had to disguise her. Okay. Shishi misses mom so much. The little girl jumped excitedly and said sweetly, last night, I even dreamed of mom. Papa, do you miss mom? Yang Yi laughed and rubbed the little fellow's head. What do you think? Of course. Shishi giggled. Ding. Another guest came. Shishi obediently took the kittens to the side to play. Yang Yi looked up and saw two young men with guitars on their backs. Their faces were quite young, and they didn't have long hair like those young people who often played music. They had normal hairstyles, and their clothes were very simple. There were no fancy decorations on their bodies. He felt more like a student from Jiangqing Media University. What would the two of you like to drink? Perhaps it was because he felt a sense of familiarity when he saw them carrying guitars. Yang Yi took the initiative to greet them. Ashu, it seems a little expensive. The slightly taller young man looked at the handwritten menu on the small blackboard, hesitated for a moment, and whispered to his companion. Yang Yi's ears were more sensitive, and he heard their whispers. It's a little expensive, but it's our first time earning money. Can we celebrate? The young man named Ashu said with a smile. Okay, you decide. The slightly taller young man seemed to be quite shy. After he finished speaking, he took half a step back and let his companion face Yang Yi. Ashu took out a handful of loose money from the pocket of his jeans, counted 60 yuan, handed it over and said, let's order 2 mochas. Are you 2 singers? Yang Yi didn't take the money, but looked at them with interest. Ashu scratched his head and said embarrassedly, I don't think we are singers. We are actually students of Jiangchuan. Just because of interest, the two of us formed a small group called 1,000 Mile Creek Tree. Yang Yi was speechless. This group name was really strange. The slightly taller young man also opened his mouth at this time and explained, it's because we both have a character in our names. My name is Miao Chuan, and his name is Lu Xiaoshu. The meaning of 1,000 Mile has 2 meanings. The first meaning is that if fate brings us together, we will meet even if we are thousands of miles apart. Miao Chuan's hometown is in the north, and mine is in the south. I didn't expect that fate would bring us together in Jiangcheng. Lu Xiaoshu smiled and said, the second meaning is that we will fly 1,000 miles. We don't expect to fly 1,000 miles, as long as our group can become famous and fulfill our music dreams. Okay. Yang Yi actually felt that their dream was quite good, and the meaning given to the group name was also very realistic. It was just that he felt that something was wrong. I think there is still hope. Yesterday, we were invited to perform and earn some money. We want to celebrate. Lu Xiaoshu's face was filled with a happy smile. It was a very simple happiness. Yang Yi smiled and pushed back the money that Lu Xiaoshu handed over. He said, since you like music and it's your first time here, how about this? Sing a song for me, and I will give you a free meal. How about it? Is it too cheap? Yang Yi asked cautiously, worried that these two guys would be too embarrassed to ask. How could it be? Lu Xiaoshu was very happy. He quickly waved his hand and said, actually, we didn't earn much. The boss only gave us 100 yuan each after singing for a day. Miao Chuan was worried that Yang Yi would be unhappy after hearing this, so he pulled Lu Xiaoshu and whispered, why did you tell us all about our background? Yang Yi didn't care. He turned off the sound system and said with a smile, come on, you guys sing. I'll make coffee for you and listen to it. The coffee shop suddenly quieted down. A few customers sitting in the booth were still not used to it. They raised their heads and looked over. She also ran over and looked at these two people curiously. The three kittens behind her were a little slower, but they also followed behind. Sherduo ran a little too fast and couldn't stop, so it bumped into Little Gray. The little kitten was dizzy and pitifully peaked. Unfortunately, its owner didn't notice. We sing folk songs. Well, if the boss doesn't mind, we can sing an original song for you, Lu Xiaoshu said. The two took off the guitars behind their backs, hung them in front of their chests, and got into a good position. Yang Yi smiled and spread out his right hand, making a please gesture. His fingertips plucked the strings of the guitar. After a delicate prelude, Lu Xiaoshu opened his mouth and sang. I'm lost in the winter in the north, wandering in the boundless wilderness, watching a few groups of geese fly away, thinking of her, the face that can't come back. Miao Chuan also played the guitar at the side and sang along. Hey, it's quite nice. Yang Yi was a little surprised, but he still couldn't help but stop what he was doing and listen carefully. Just as Lu Xiaoshu said, Qianli Chuanqiu and the others sang a very authentic folk song style. The lyrics were a little rough, but the tune they played was so delicate that it made people's hearts tremble. Of course, untrained singing skills were the same as a normal singer's, green and pale. However, Lu Xiaoshu's voice was very good. It was as clean as the northern winter sky he sang about. Chapter 165. Don't ask me when I'll cross the mountains and rivers, cross the grassland, and come to your side. Because that's today. Lu Xiaoshu's affectionate humming finally received applause from the customers in the coffee shop. Yang Yi also smiled and applauded them. Thank you. Thank you. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan put their palms together and thanked the audience. They were a little nervous at first, but they were overjoyed when they finally got the affirmation. Their young faces were filled with happy smiles. You guys sang very well. A young voice interrupted. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan looked down and saw a delicate and cute little girl. She was wearing a long shirt with a woven skirt, looking bright and pretty. They knew that she was the boss's daughter, so they scratched their heads and smiled embarrassedly. They could even be praised by a child. Our Shishi rarely praises people, which means that your song is really well written. What's your name? Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's hair lovingly, then raised his head and asked with a smile. Shishi felt that she was praised by her father in front of outsiders, so she was happy and shy. She giggled, pulled down her father's big hand, turned around and ran away. Xiao Guai and Shida followed closely behind. Little Gray, who had curiously drilled into the bar, and was nibbling on Yang Yi's trousers, turned its ears. It heard the movement and quickly ran out to catch up with its friends. This song is called, I Miss Her in the Winter in the North. It was written by Ah Chuan. Lu Xiaoshu quickly replied. Ah Shu also participated in the composition. He's very good at arranging. There was a company that wanted him to be an arranger before. Miao Chuan also praised his partner. As Yang Yi brewed coffee for them, he smiled and said, Oh, is that so? Why not? Lu Xiaoshu said embarrassedly, I don't really want to be an arranger. I still prefer to sing. And your voice is very good. Yang Yi nodded and said, It's a pity that you don't sing. Actually, Yang Yi was a little envious of Lu Xiaoshu's voice. He could basically sing all kinds of folk songs, and his singing was no worse than the original singer. Just like how many people like Sui Li's version of Miss Dong. The clean voice of a young male singer was more attractive than that of an old man. The problem is that he's ugly. Lu Xiaoshu said helplessly, I sent a sample to the record company in the past, and they wanted me to try it out. But when they saw the real person, they shook their heads and said that this face wasn't suitable to be a star. Indeed, Lu Xiaoshu looked very ordinary. He was not particularly ugly, but he was definitely not handsome. In comparison, Yang Yi could still be called a handsome man in the past, but Lu Xiaoshu was not handsome in any era. Miao Chuan was the same. The two of them were probably in the same boat. Yang Yi did not like comforting adults. He felt that adults should have their own perseverance, but he still said reluctantly, It's okay. The road of music has never been smooth. Stick to your dreams and keep going. I believe you will succeed. Thank you. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan both nodded. Yang Yi had already finished the work at hand. He brought out 2 cups of hot, white coffee. Santos, my treat. Have a taste. Santos was much more expensive than mocha. Lu Xiaoshu was stunned for a moment, but he still nodded freely and said with a smile, "Okay, thank you, boss." "Right." Yang Yi stopped them and said with a smile, "About the song you just sang, I have an immature suggestion. Of course, if you think it is inappropriate, you can ignore it. That is, you can consider changing the long string of melody at the end, which is a little flashy. I think it would be better to have a clean 2 or 3 sound loops to make a lingering sound." This suggestion immediately made Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan fall into deep thought. Sure enough, they were 2 guys who were obsessed with music. They forgot to respond to Yang Yi and went to a booth with their coffee in a daze. Then they sat facing each other and pondered. Yang Yi shook his head and did not care. On the other side, after a while Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan came back to their senses. Chuan, it seems that what the boss said is quite reasonable." Lu Xiaoshu's fingers were floating on the table, as if he was plucking the strings of an instrument. "Yes, it's not your fault. When I was writing, I wanted to make the feelings more intense at the end, so there were some elements of rock and roll." Miao Chuan nodded. "Hey, drink the coffee. Don't let it get cold later." Lu Xiaoshu helped Miao Chuan open the sugar jar and added sugar. "But I'm quite surprised. I didn't expect the boss to know so much about music. I just don't know if he knows how to write songs. I really want to communicate with him." Now the shop was playing records again. The surround hi-fi sound system vividly reflected the beautiful melody of the pure music. Some customers were intoxicated by it and did not want to leave. "It shouldn't be, right?" Miao Chuan took a sip of coffee and his eyes suddenly lit up. The taste of the coffee in Santos was very good. The bitterness and acidity were moderate. Moreover, Yang Yi used the freshest coffee beans. After drinking it, there was a lingering fragrance in the mouth, as if there was a natural fragrance of lemon, grape, apple and other fruits. Miao Chuan continued, "People who like to listen to songs may not necessarily write songs. But I think the boss is a person with a dream of music. He encouraged us just now and said it very well." Yes. Lu Xiaoshu was busy tasting the coffee. He knew a little about it. After smelling it and tasting it, he was too busy to talk. At night, Yang Yi drove the car with Shishi to pick up Murphy. After not seeing her for a few days, he missed her. However, when Yang Yi looked at Murphy affectionately, Murphy could not help but laugh when she saw him. Then, she laughed so hard that she held her stomach and squatted on the ground, unable to stand up. This made Yang Yi laugh inexplicably. He touched his face and found that there was no rice grain stuck to it. "Mom, does your stomach hurt?" Shishi could not help but look at her mother and ask worriedly. How would they know? Murphy was laughing because she remembered the comic picture that Yang Yi sent her as usual this morning. It was still the series of I Love You. However, this time, the white little person was sticking out her butt cheekily with a heart floating behind her but even fart is in the shape of I love you. In the morning, she was convulsing with Mo Shawan laughing so hard that she almost had cramps. After picking up Murphy, Yang Yi disguised her as usual. Although she still looked very beautiful, at least she would not be recognized as Murphy. "Well, I still don't like Mama's appearance." Cece read to the end and pouted. "Mama is actually pretty." Murphy raised her head slightly and looked at Yang Yi with some pride. Her eyes told him, "See, I'm still a natural beauty. I look good." Yang Yi looked at Murphy's eyes and thought of something. He opened the glove compartment in the car and took out a pair of thin glasses that looked like normal glasses. He put them on Murphy and said, "Okay, no one will recognize you like this. I guarantee that even if Mo Shawan stood in front of you, she wouldn't be able to recognize you. These glasses are a bit ugly." Although they were plain, Murphy could not help but nitpick. "That's why I want it to look ordinary. If you wear those exaggerated glasses, I'm afraid that there will be more people looking back to see if you are a celebrity." Yang Yi explained seriously. "Okay, straight man." Chapter 166. Yang Yi's tyrannical wolf drove to the underground parking lot of the Haihong shopping mall in Binhai district. including the last concert. This was the second time that Murphy swaggered in public with her child. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Murphy tightly grasped the shoulder strap of her bag, her palms sweating a little. "Come, I'll hold your hand." Yang-yi locked the car door, walked around, and said gently. In an instant, Murphy seemed to have returned to the day of the concert, when Yang-yi also held her hand and supported her. "Papa also has to hold my hand. It's a little dark here, I'm scared." She followed her father closely with small steps. She timidly looked back at the depths of the parking lot, where the lights were dim, as if a big monster was lying in ambush. "No problem." Yang-yi held his daughter's hand with his right hand, and without any explanation, his left hand pulled Murphy's hand over. Murphy was a little hesitant, but she didn't struggle. The two of them were still holding hands when they walked into the mall. Although they maintained a suitable distance, holding hands seemed to be a normal action that they were used to doing. She, on the other hand, couldn't hold back her excitement when she arrived at the brightly lit shopping mall. She broke away from her father's big hand and ran at the front. "Papa, Mom, come quickly." The little girl's laughter was like a silver coin gently hitting a bell, crisp and pleasant. The little girl wore small running shoes and ran on the mirror-like smooth tiles of the shopping mall. After a while, she staggered a few steps and had a lot of fun. As if infected by her daughter's happiness, Murphy's nervous and cold face melted like spring snow, revealing a slight smile. She took the initiative and pulled Yang-yi's hand, blinked and said, "Why don't you walk faster?" She went to kindergarten, which was similar to going to school. From morning to afternoon, including lunch, she would be picked up by her father in the evening. Therefore, Murphy had already made a list of things to buy for she when she went to kindergarten. For example, a small school bag. Although there would be no textbooks in it, Murphy felt that she would look good with a small school bag on her back. And there was a small school bag, which could be used to store other things, such as the next lunchbox to buy. She had her lunch in kindergarten. This kindergarten encouraged children to bring their own lunches, which was a bit like the Japanese lunchbox culture. Yang-yi felt that it was quite good. He prepared lunch for his daughter, which was clean and healthy. Moreover, Cece loved to eat her father's cooking. She would never get tired of it. Of course, Yang-yi spent a lot of effort preparing the 3 meals every day. He tried different ways to make delicious food for his daughter. How could he be tired of it? "We need to buy 2 lunchboxes. You prepare 2 lunches for Shishi. When the other children want to try it, Shishi can share it with them," Murphy said to Yang-yi as she picked out the lunchboxes. She wanted Shishi to be a generous person. She wanted her to not be stingy and learn to share. Of course, Yang-yi also hoped that Shishi would be liked by the other children. However, he was a man, so he did not consider everything. Murphy still hoped that Shishi could share and eat until she was full. "Mom, let's buy this." Shishi was also picking. She took a lunchbox from an unknown shelf. Obviously, she was attracted by the cartoon cat pattern on it. Murphy took it and opened it to look at the internal structure. In the end, she shook her head and said, "This is not good. There are no layers. The rice and dishes have to be separated. The vegetables and meat also have to be separated." She pouted unhappily. Murphy asked her to put it back, but the little girl was not willing to. Yang-yi smiled. He took the lunchbox, took Shishi's hand and said, "It's okay. Let's choose the style first, and then find one with the same pattern for Shishi." He understood the little girl's thoughts better. Shishi's eyes suddenly lit up and she asked happily, "Really? Can we really?" "Of course." Yang-yi rubbed his daughter's head and said, "Of course, we have to buy a pattern that Shishi likes." Papa is the best." The little girl smiled sweetly. Murphy, who was dissatisfied with Yang-yi's deliberate flattery of her daughter, curled her lips and reached out to pinch the soft flesh on Yang-yi's waist. As a result, it was hard and almost hurt her hand. Not only did they buy the lunchbox, but Murphy was also very thoughtful. She also went to find a small medicine bag, which seemed to be specially assembled for children. It was a very small box, with cartoon band-aids for children and disinfectant cotton swabs. However, there was no medicine, because the medicine could not be carried by children. It was not much, and it was very light and easy to carry. This thing is not necessary, is it? Yang Yi frowned and said to Murphy, in kindergarten, there are teachers looking after her. Do you want Shishi to be a doctor? What if Shishi gets hurt? Murphy asked him. Yang Yi suddenly frowned and said fiercely, who dares to hurt my Shishi? I'll chop him with a knife. Mo Fei rolled her eyes grumpily and said, what the hell are you doing? What I mean is, what if Cece accidentally got injured and bumped into something by herself? She's not at home. There will always be times when she can't take care of herself. Yang Yi scratched his head and said in confusion, but if you buy these, Shishi won't know how to use them. Murphy thought for a moment, picked up another bag, threw it into the shopping basket, and said with satisfaction, now take one bag and teach her how to use it. Although they were all women who were not afraid of tiring when shopping, Shishi did not have the patience to slowly pick with Murphy. The little girl ran out and ran back, not stopping for a moment. At this time, Murphy stayed a little longer. Shishi could not help but drag her father's hand. Papa, let's go to the front and watch. How could she drag Yang Yi? However, he was afraid that Shishi would fall, so he hurriedly took 2 steps forward. He looked back at Murphy helplessly. You go first. Murphy covered her mouth and laughed. I'll find you after I buy these. After getting used to not being watched, Murphy also became bold and went shopping by herself. Murphy bought new towels and new milk bottles for Shishi. The shopping basket was full. Not all of them were used, and some were spare, before she went to find Yang Yi. It was not difficult to find. This children's products supermarket was still a little different from a real supermarket. After all, there were not so many varieties. Murphy soon found the father and daughter in the clothing area. Shishi was trying on hats. Yang Yi was holding several hats that Shishi had tried on. There were knitted ski hats that were not suitable for this season. Hard straw hats that were very fashionable. But Shishi did not like the feeling of the hard straw hats, and a women's fisherman's hat that Chen Fengchen had worn before. Shishi was trying on a bell-shaped hat with a white body and a blue band. Its size was specially made for little girls. When Shishi wore it, it was just enough to cover her bangs without covering her face. Today, Yang Yi had tied a dignified and beautiful princess hairstyle for the little girl, which was just right for this hat. Shishi stood in front of the mirror and refused to move. Wasn't the beautiful and elegant little girl in the mirror her? This hat is very beautiful. Shishi, are you going to wear this hat to see the children the day after tomorrow? Murphy asked with a smile. Our little princess has grown up and knows how to dress up. Mom, don't say that. Shishi was a little embarrassed and went into her mother's arms. Chapter 167. Sister Murphy, this is Jujia. Didn't you come to the company today? In the morning, Murphy received a phone call. That disgusting and flattering voice made her good mood disappear. She had planned to read the Shape of Love comic that Yang Yi had drawn himself, but Murphy lost interest. Who pissed you off? Yang Yi came back with the kittens' food bowls. He had just taken them to clean up. After all, he had fed them once in the morning, and the kittens were very picky. The leftover cat food had to be thrown away. If it was left in the air for too long, the taste would change, and then they wouldn't like to eat it. Jujia, the disgusting person that the company secretly arranged the scandal last time. Murphy rarely complained to others, even to Mo Shaowan. When she was bullied by Yang Yi in the past, she silently endured it in her heart. However, she didn't know why, but now in front of Yang Yi, she had a desire to talk. Yang Yi frowned. In his mind, a guy with a pretty face appeared. In the photo, his smile was very annoying. Yang Yi asked, "What's wrong with him now? Didn't I tell you yesterday that the company knew that my 12 songs were written by Mu Xiang and wanted to give them to other singers? Fortunately, Mu Xiang found out and solved this problem with Shaowan early." Murphy said, "At that time, Jujia went to record a show, so he wasn't in the company. Now that he's back, I don't know where he heard this, but he shamelessly asked Mu Xiang and me to ask for a song for him. Haha, Mu Xiang probably won't give it to him." Yang Yi sneered. Mo Fei nodded. Then she snorted and said disdainfully, "I don't even want to talk to him, but what's even worse is that he even shamelessly asked Mu Zi. Ong to sell him a nude song and fill in his name. He said that he didn't care about money. But how is this a matter of money? Does this person have any principles? It's disgusting. Yang Yi was dumbfounded. There was such a thing? He's just a small-time celebrity. How can he say that money is not a problem? Yang Yi was curious about one of the points. Murphy explained, Zhu Jie is Sister Ling's relative, and it's said that his family owns a company and is very rich. Mo Xiaowan was the one who told her all this gossip after she heard it. It turned out that he was Niu Meiling's relative. No wonder he dared to create a scandal with Murphy. Yang Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. He felt that Zhu Jie would not let this matter go. After all, the people of Tianmei had their own mailbox. Originally, Yang Yi thought that if someone continued to harass him, he would change his email address. But now Yang Yi's interest was piqued. Since he made Murphy unhappy, how could Yang Yi let that guy be safe and sound? Since he had his eyes on Mu Xiang, Yang Yi also had an interesting idea. On the other side, Zhu Jie angrily threw his phone on the sofa and cursed, F***CK this 13, he doesn't put me in his eyes. Now his face was gloomy and his face was ferocious. He no longer looked like a handsome young man in front of the camera. His manager, Du Luan, did not have much confidence. He could only comfort him. Jie, don't make things difficult for Murphy. Let's think of another way. What way? Zhu Jie unhappily said. Don't tell me to find someone else to sing. I don't want anyone else's song. I want Mu Xiang's song. I want to be like Chen Yijie and be famous all over the country. Du Luan bitterly smiled in his heart. You want to be like Chen Yijie? I'm afraid that even if you sang Long Time Not Seeing, you wouldn't be famous. Zhu Jie was really ambitious. His voice was not distinguishable, and he did not go through any professional training. Later, when Niu Meiling arranged the training for him, he did not seriously learn. He just thought that he was a little handsome, rich, and had a good background. It would be easy to be a star. Obviously, it was all a daydream. More than 2 years had passed, and he had spent a lot of money, but there were few ripples. However, Du Luan was very tactful. He never showed his disdain in his heart. He smiled and said to Zhu Jie as if nothing had happened. Jie, although I didn't come back for the meeting, I heard that Jian Chua has Mu Xiang's contact information. And I guess this matter has something to do with your aunt. Instead of looking for Murphy, you might as well look for Jian Chua or Sister Ling. My aunt knows Mu Xiang? Zhu Jie did not have a brain, so he listened to half of the words. His eyes lit up, and he patted the sofa and said, Hey Du Luan, why didn't you say so earlier? You made me angry with this woman. Well, he was anxious and now he blamed himself. Du Luan was speechless, but he still advised, Jie, don't worry about her. I'm going to ask my aunt for help. Zhu Jie was not interested in anything, but he was the most enthusiastic about currying favor with Aunt Ling. He turned around and ran out excitedly. In order to make Murphy feel better, Yang Yi took her downstairs to play the piano. Music could be said to be Murphy's catmint. When she played the melody that she liked, she gradually smiled again. Yang Yi and Shishi were playing with the cats. In order to take care of the 3 new members of the family, Yang Yi bought books to learn about cat rearing. Therefore, Yang Yi could be said to be a cat expert with rich theoretical experience. At this moment, he let Shishi hold the kittens, and then he took the rake to comb the kittens' hair. Cats shed their hair every day, but they shed a lot in spring and autumn. It's almost autumn now, and I've seen them shed a lot of hair recently, Yang Yi explained. But when we comb their hair, we don't want them to shed their hair faster, but to help the kittens keep their hair clean, so that their hair is more shiny and beautiful. Shishi was actually more interested in the rake in her father's hand. She remembered this word. This is Zhu Beiji's weapon. Yes, Zhu Beiji's rake is also a rake, but his is bigger, Yang Yi said with a smile. I want to play with it too. Papa, can I play with it? Shishi opened her big eyes and looked at her father expectantly. Who could be indifferent to such cute big eyes? Yang Yi handed the rake to the little girl and taught her how to hold it. Don't use too much strength. You can't hold it too tightly, or you'll hurt the kittens. When Shishi heard that she would hurt the kittens, she quickly learned from her father. She had to use 2 fingers to gently hold the handle, just like holding a pen. Yang Yi grabbed Little Gray. The little guy had been waiting by the side for a long time. Just now, it was eagerly watching Tao Dao being taken care of so comfortably. It was probably impatient. "Poop picker, have you forgotten about me?" He stroked Little Gray's head with his hand, following its soft blue ink hair, and massaging its body. In fact, there was no need for this foreplay. Little Gray was lying there comfortably with its eyes closed, waiting for the poop picker to come. Under her father's guidance, Shishi held the rake in her hand and started to comb Little Gray's hair in a small area, starting from its back. She didn't use much strength, but Little Gray was so comfortable that its tail curled up and gently twisted around the back of its neck, chin, and chest. Little Gray received a full set of massage services from its little master. After everything was done, it jumped away energetically and couldn't wait to walk around in front of its companions, as if it was showing off. Hee, it's so fun. Little Gray is also very obedient. Shishi was addicted to stroking the cat. She turned her head and said, "Where's Xiao Guai? Xiao Guai, come quickly. Big sister is going to comb your hair with Zhu Beiji's weapon." Immediately, a little blue shadow jumped down from the sofa next to her. Chapter 168. Unknowingly, Little Han welcomed the fourth book on the shelves. Except for My Fairy Lady, the other two failed. He was very nervous about the results after the book was published. After all, it was a self-test to verify whether Little Han had the ability to continue on this path. However, at the same time, Little Han's nerves that had been tense for half a month seemed to be relaxed, as if he had figured something out. In fact, because he liked it, Little Han still had the firm belief to continue on this path. There was no need to complain to everyone about the troubles in reality and the discrimination in writing online novels. Little Han wanted to talk to everyone about the original intention of writing, the artistic life of a stay-at-home dad. When he wrote My Fairy Lady, Little Han had just graduated from college. Of course, he didn't have a daughter, but the variety show Where Are We Going, Dad? Was popular at that time, and Little Han's desire to have a daughter was discovered. At the same time, he had the idea of creating a work that doted on his daughter. Unfortunately, when he wrote My Fairy Lady, it was his first time writing. He didn't know how to organize the plot, nor did he know how to arrange the scenes of the protagonist and the supporting characters. As a result, there were a lot of flaws. In addition, he was busy at work and didn't have much time to come up with ideas. In the end, the results were very bad, but at least he followed his own ideas and persevered until the end. Even so, 3 million words was not an easy achievement for a newbie. Almost a year later, he had failed 2 books with other themes and accumulated some experience. Before Little Han was ready to start a new book, he still thought of the regrets left by My Fairy Lady. So this time, he planned to write a novel with the theme of a stay-at-home dad. It was different from the former, but it also had a cute daughter. When he wrote The Artistic Life of a Stay-at-Home Dad, Little Han still didn't have a daughter, and he was still single. This was also good, as he could put more effort into coming up with the plot. However, although he didn't have a daughter, Little Han's description of Shishi and the details of raising a daughter were not completely based on his imagination. It included a lot of knowledge that he had accumulated from observing children and playing with them. Therefore, when Little Han went out on the street and saw some young parents with children, he couldn't help but stop and smile slightly. He was a bit like a weird uncle. Of course, Little Han usually liked children. During the holidays, he played happily with his cousin's children. When the company organized activities, his colleagues' children also liked to stick to Little Han. It was just that he didn't know whether they treated Little Han as a big brother or an uncle. As a young man, Little Han still hoped that it was the former, haha. It was also because of these observations that Xiaohan was able to describe so many details of her life. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to write a lively and cute little Shishi out of thin air. Let's talk about the characterization of Yang Yi and Murphy. These 2 protagonists were quite controversial because people often took things out of context or compared them with reality. Perhaps Xiaohan's ability was not enough to reflect their strengths. However, putting aside everyone's prejudices for the time being, Xiaohan talked about Murphy first. In terms of character, she was a woman who was obsessed with music and liked to sing on stage. She was a very simple and naive woman who liked to use a cold face to protect herself against complicated interpersonal relationships that she didn't like. Whether or not she existed in reality, Murphy existed in this novel. She was such a person. Of course, a simple person would be hit by reality. When she debuted, her mother used her own connections to reduce the difficulty of her starting out. Later, Murphy was discovered by Sister Ling because of her voice and singing skills. Sister Ling spared no effort to support her. At that time, Tianmei was just starting out, and it was still a warm and happy time. Regardless of whether Sister Ling's thoughts were simple or not, in order to support Murphy, she treated her like a daughter. This was no problem. Therefore, after working hard for a few years, Murphy soared to the sky with the album, Same Love as Missouri Road, and became a heavenly queen. That's right, with her personality. She would definitely suffer and encounter problems as a heavenly queen. But the problem was that not long after she became a heavenly queen and signed the contract, she retired because of her pregnancy, so the problems didn't appear for the time being. It could be said that Tianmei suffered a lot because of her retirement. Perhaps it was because in the past 4 or 5 years, Sister Ling's thoughts had changed. She was a realistic person. A simple person like Murphy wouldn't be able to survive in the entertainment industry. Everyone wasn't wrong about this. But who asked her to meet Yang Yi? This bug-like character. Kigo Higashino's Journey by Night had a paragraph on the back of the book. My sky has no sun. It's always night, but it's not dark because something replaces the sun. Although it's not as bright as the sun, it's enough for me. With this light, I can treat night as day. I've never had a sun, so I'm not afraid of losing it. The story behind this paragraph was very gloomy. Of course, it didn't fit the situation of stay-at-home dad's artistic life. But Xiaohan wanted to use this opportunity to talk about Yang Yi's character. Yang Yi was first an assassin, then his identity after transmigrating was a wooden special forces soldier. As an assassin, he lived in the dark in his previous life. All his memories were cruel, and without a trace of hope. But he was a person who yearned for the sun, just like how he liked music, literature, and everything symmetrically arranged. This was a person who yearned for beauty in his heart. Coming to a new world, a new body, and an identity that could bathe in the sun. Yang Yi was very happy, but also very nervous. He was afraid that he would lose all of this. So he was very cautious in everything he did, including opening a side account to write songs for Murphy. In everyone's eyes, it was very routine and meaningless. But in fact, for Yang Yi, this was a stupid choice he made because he was afraid of losing it. There was no sun in his memory, but there was a person who replaced the sun and brought light to his world. Of course, this person was not Murphy but she. This little cutie, this innocent little girl, made Yang Yi begin to face the beauty of this world. He began to carefully change his thoughts of ignoring the law and rules. This all needed a process. Yang Yi began to learn how to live and love life. He began to learn how to be a qualified father and enjoy the joy of doting on his daughter. But he was still afraid of losing it, so he was very cautious and still chose to keep a low profile. Speaking of which, Shishi was Yang Yi's son, and Yang Yi was Murphy's son. This man once gave her hope when she was in the dark. Although she later gave birth to Yang Yi's child, she did not regret it. Now Yang Yi was still her son. After he changed, his gentleness, thoughtfulness, and romance melted the iceberg that was Murphy, allowing her to enjoy the sweet and sour taste of love like a young girl. It allowed Murphy to find a second light of life outside of music. Of course, Yang Yi would also use songs from his previous life to support Murphy's career. A simple woman indeed could not go far in the big dive vat of the entertainment industry, but with Yang Yi, who was like a bug in the game, supporting her, would it be possible? In reality, Murphy and Yang Yi did not exist, but in the novel, why couldn't a pure voice exist? Similarly, Murphy was also very attractive to Yang Yi. Men who were used to fighting against each other and bloodshed actually preferred simple and innocent women. It could be said that he yearned for pure love, or it could be said that he had a strong desire to protect her. Anyway, two people with special personalities were like turtles and mung beans, and they liked each other. In any case, the overall story was still daily and warm, but it was also interspersed with some characters and plots that promoted the plot. After all, one would get tired of eating too much cake. Wouldn't it be better to have a bowl of hot and sour noodles or soy milk and fried dough sticks occasionally? Oh right, little Han did not forget to build a Disneyland for Shishi. The plot had been constantly foreshadowing and preparing. As for when it would be built, take a guess. After talking about the plot and characters, little Han should return to the main topic. First of all, the book was able to be recommended all the way until it was finally pushed to the shelves. First of all, he had to thank his readers for their support. However, this paragraph was a little tedious, so it would be described later. Then little Han would like to thank the editor-in-chief, Hu Shua, and little Han's editor-in-chief, Wu Tong. Since signing the contract, they had been arranging for little Han to be recommended, including entering the arena of Sanjiang early on and many homepage recommendations. These big promotions that little Han would not have dared to imagine in the past were all enjoyed by stay-at-home dad. Because of this, it gained more lovely readers. Of course, he also had to thank Kola, who had taken over his shift these few days. In the midst of crazily working overtime to review the book, he still took the time to answer questions for little Han, who was anxious because My Fairy Lady had been temporarily blocked. He was really a good person. He hoped that the editorial department could give Kola a few more bottles of Nutri-Express. Back to what he said earlier about thanking his readers, whether it was the readers who drove all day in the group chat, the readers who were diligently writing reviews in the book review section, or the readers who were silently tipping and voting. It was because of your clicks and recommendations that the grades of Stay-at-Home Dad rose steadily and won the editor's favor. Although he had to thank all the readers who supported little Han, how should he put it? Now little Han had to mention a few familiar names. He might forget some of them, so he apologized in advance. Li Jishu, thank you. When Stay-at-Home Dad was still in its infancy, you had already included little Han's book in your reading list, and had been supporting it all along. Tian Rushui, in fact, you rarely posted reviews, but you tipped almost every day. Little Han remembered your name, and then many little drops made an ocean. He also had fan points from the leader. Thank you for your persistence. Dreamkin Flower, Wu Ma, Bold and Unrestrained Life, and so on. In fact, there were many IDs that were very familiar. Thank you for always being active in the book review section, giving little Han valuable advice, and sometimes speaking up for justice. Thank you, T Mountain Hermit, for always supporting little Han like a big brother. He even scolded the trolls who did not even read the follow-up posts for little Han. Thank you, Sky Blueberry Jam, for being the first leader in little Han's life. I still remember when I saw your tip, little Han rubbed his eyes. He could not believe that there were so many zeros behind it. Thank you, Old K Luo, for being the second leader of little Han. I also want to thank Xiao Yao. Both of you are readers in the group. Thank you for your constant support. Yes, I also want to thank Dali Creates Miracles for your support. You are already in your third year of high school. Hurry up and study hard. Come on. There are many more IDs to thank. There is really no way to write down everyone's IDs, but little Han has always remembered them in his heart. With your support, he will continue to work hard. More than 300,000 words. After 2 months, Stay-at-Home Dad was still going to be published. This book had also reached the most critical moment. Here, little Han sincerely called on readers who liked Stay-at-Home Dad to support the original subscription if they had the ability. Beliefs and ideals cannot break free from reality. Every original subscription will be an affirmation of little Han's hard work in writing. It will be the foundation for little Han to create a better story. It will be published tomorrow. If there are no accidents, it will start to update after 12 o'clock. It seems that it will only enter V at this time. It is estimated that there will be an explosion of 10 chapters per day on the first and second days. On the third day, little Han will try to update 10 chapters per day, but it depends on whether he can write by then. After that, he will normally update at least 3 chapters per day. He will update for the reward of 10,000 or N rewards. However, the amount of updates depends on the situation. Normally, he will update once per day. If little Han has spare time, he will update once more. However, this situation is very rare. After all, little Han's writing speed is a bit slow. The updates that he owes will be made up one by one. Little Han has noted them down. As for the update time, the first, second, and third updates will be the same as ours now. 10 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and 7 o'clock in the evening. If he updates, it will be scheduled at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. This kind of explosion and update can be considered as attentiveness, right? Even if it is not for the sake of little Han's hard work, but for the sake of Shishi's pitiful big eyes, give stay-at-home dad's literary life some support for subscriptions and monthly votes. Love you guys forever. Chapter 169. Sometimes, the 4-year-old girl didn't know how to control her strength. Even though Shishi was trying her best to control herself, she would still occasionally hurt the kitten. Xiao Guai would scream from time to time, and its body would tremble. But overall, this massacred chicken was still very comfortable. Xiao Guai squinted its eyes, enjoying the pain and happiness. Little Gray couldn't help but walk around its little master with its tail up. Xiao Guai was fine. Its personality was just like Murphy's in the past. It was so cold that it pretended not to care at all. Its head was turned to the side, but it was unwilling to walk away. Its tail was raised up and gently swaying, revealing its inner desire. Little Gray was the eldest of the 3 cat siblings, but it also liked to act spoiled the most. It looked at the side for a while, then put its fluffy little paw on its little master's arm as if to say, "Let go of that cat, come to me." After Yang Yi saw that his daughter was already skillfully stroking the cat, he stood up, washed his hands at the bar, and poured a glass of water. Murphy had also stopped at some point. She sat on the piano stool and smiled slightly as she watched her daughter's actions. In the past few days, Mo Fei's relatives had come. Yesterday, she had a stomachache because she laughed too much. Yang Yi poured a glass of warm water and brought it to her. "Thank you." Murphy took the water. The clean glass, crystal clear water, and the warm feeling in her hands made her raise her head to look at Yang Yi. Her eyes were soft. Yang Yi smiled faintly, leaned on the side, and looked at their daughter with Murphy. "Actually, I'm still a little reluctant to send her to kindergarten." Yang Yi sighed softly and said, "I'm used to having such a noisy little fella at home. I'm afraid it'll be quiet all of a sudden tomorrow." Murphy looked at him reproachfully and said, "You're still talking about it. Shishi is used to being wild at your place. She doesn't even want to go back to my place. My house is deserted." "Then move in with me. I'll send you to the company." Yang Yi suddenly turned his head and said with a burning gaze, "Just like Shishi, I'll pick you up at night." Murphy didn't know if it was Yang Yi's words or Yang Yi's longing eyes that made her flustered. She pursed her lips and said after a while, "How can that be? You're working too hard." "Not at all." Yang Yi felt that he had a chance. He tried his best to promote himself. "Think about it. If you live here, the place will be spacious, the surrounding environment will be comfortable, the mountain will be by the water, and the air will be fresh." It always made people feel that the next sentence should be, "Do you want to buy or not? Do you buy it or not? If you buy it now, this house will only cost you 998 yuan. You won't regret it if you don't buy it." Of course, Yang Yi wasn't that stupid. He continued, "And I can cook delicious food for the 2 of you every day. If you want to eat Chinese food, I can cook Sichuan, Shandong, Guangdong, Su, Min, Zhejiang, Hunan, and Anhui. If you want to eat Western food, I can cook French, Italian, and even Russian. Or if you want to eat sushi, I can make it." He recited the long list of dishes without his tongue spinning. She didn't know if he had learned Shu Lai Bao, but Murphy couldn't help but want to laugh when she heard it. "I can't do it now. I'm very busy, and you're also very busy. How can I need you to pick me up every day?" Murphy still shook her head, but explained in a soft voice, "And sometimes the recording state can't be interrupted. It might even be very late." At this moment, Yang Yi's mind popped up with an idea. "Hurry up and earn money so that Mo Shawan can open a studio near home. Besides, now that you're opening a shop, won't there be more customers?" Murphy smiled and pointed outside. She said, "Although you locked the door today, I saw several groups of people coming over to look. When school officially starts, there might be more customers. When that time comes, who will have time to drive an hour to pick me up?" Oh, Yang Yi nodded silently. Murphy was telling the truth. Recently, there had been more customers. If Yang Yi opened a shop, sometimes he wouldn't have time to take care of Shi. However, this wasn't the life he wanted. How should he adjust? August 31st. Today was the big day that Shi entered the garden. But it was also an important milestone in the internet era. Early in the morning, led by Sahara Online Mall, formerly Sahara Online Bookstore, Chiyua Literature website, and the three major domestic banks jointly held a media conference. We announced that the internet has entered the era of online payment. The CEO of the commercial bank said with a red face. He and the leaders of the other two banks, the owner of Sahara Online Mall, Fu Jun, and the owner of Chiyua Literature website, pushed the trigger that symbolized the beginning of the voyage. The media, who had already received the news, excitedly pressed the flash button and desperately raised their hands to ask questions. After Fu Jun sent the leaders away, he stayed and answered the questions of the reporters one by one. What is online payment? It is that netizens can skip the tedious process of transferring money in front of banks or ATMs. They can directly log into the corresponding bank's online platform and complete the payment operation. Obviously, it will greatly improve the efficiency of online payment, allowing more people to easily enjoy the services on the internet. Of course, the most important thing is to save money. Why? Before the appearance of online payment, there were two processes for people to recharge and pay online. One was to go to the bank to make every transfer payment, and the other was through a third-party internet payment company. For example, Xiaoming liked to read novels on the Taijun website, and also liked to read novels on the Chiyu Literature website. He also liked to watch movies on one website, and listen to songs on another website. Obviously, he couldn't go to the bank to pay for every novel he read and every song he listened to. It was also impossible for him to top up a large sum of money in advance on every website. Moreover, there were no pirated websites in this world, so there was no free lunch. So, Xiaoming didn't want the trouble, nor did he want too much money to be locked up in different websites. He could only go to the bank to remit money to a third-party internet payment company, and the money would be stored in the internet payment company's account in the form of numbers. Then, if he wanted to spend money on a website, he only needed to transfer the corresponding amount of money online, through the third-party internet payment company, and recharge it into the website's account to complete the spending. Of course, there was no interest for this money in the internet payment company, and the fees for each transfer were not cheap. However, in the past, netizens could only bear with it in order to enjoy these services. Now, with the appearance of online payment, there was no doubt that it greatly impacted the third-party internet payment market, but it also brought convenience to the netizens. The internet enters a new era. This title was definitely not sensationalism. Some of the reporters were already excited, as if they had seen the great prosperity of the internet. Chapter 170. Although Yang Yi was inextricably linked to the internet, it didn't affect him for the time being. Today's big event for the Yang family was to send Shi to kindergarten. Early in the morning, the little girl was in a good mood. She hadn't realized how cruel it was to go to kindergarten, and she felt that it was very fresh. Moreover, her parents had dressed her up beautifully, making her look like a little princess. "Carry your backpack. Come, let mom take a look. Our family she has become a big girl. So pretty." Murphy's exaggerated tone made Shi, who wasn't used to carrying a backpack, overjoyed. As she smiled, she pinched her skirt in embarrassment. Yang Yi sat on the sofa's armrest and smiled helplessly. "All right, it's almost time. If we don't leave now, we'll be late." He wasn't afraid of being late, but he was afraid of the two girls, one big and one small, spending half a day to dress up. It was so tiring waiting. Murphy woke up early in the morning and spent half a day dressing up. Yang Yi was speechless. He said, "You're not sending Shi to the kindergarten." You're staying in the car the whole time. Why do you have to dress up? The result of this complaint was obvious. Then, Murphy combed and styled Shishi's hair. She also picked out clothes, changed clothes and shoes. Yang Yi waited for more than an hour. Murphy said excitedly to Yang Yi, "Wait a minute." She turned and ran to Yang Yi's study. Then, she ran back in her slippers with Yang Yi's SLR camera in her hand. She stuffed it into Yang Yi's hands and smiled. How can we not take photos on such an important day? Thus, Yang Yi could only take beautiful photos of them. Murphy asked him to set a timer so that the whole family could take a group photo together. Another 20 minutes passed, and they were almost late. Murphy reluctantly let Yang Yi push her into the car. On the way, Murphy was still examining the photos taken by Yang Yi. After a few months of practice, Yang Yi's portrait photography skills had improved a lot. Murphy was very satisfied, but there were still some parts that she felt were not taken well. Shishi, why do you always use the peace sign when taking photos? Ah. The little girl looked at her mother in a daze. She didn't quite understand. Murphy imitated Shishi in the photo and made a V sign. She smiled and said, "Look, you always take photos like this. If you do this in every photo, it won't look good. Papa taught me." Shishi sat on the child seat and grabbed her mother's arm. She also wanted to see the photos. "That's why your papa has facial paralysis in the photos," Murphy said mercilessly. Yang Yi smiled bitterly in the front, but he didn't care. "You have to learn how to take photos from Mom. Mom will teach you that you can make expressions like this." Murphy taught Shishi how to act cute. One moment, she would puff out her mouth and stare. The next moment, she would hold her cheek with her hand, and the next moment, she would make a surprised round mouth. "There's such a thing." Murphy smiled. She made a fist with her right hand, and then puffed out her mouth. Hee 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 hee. She didn't care about going to school. She was amused by her mother and couldn't stop laughing. "Papa, look. Mom is like a cat." Yang Yi glanced at the rearview mirror and saw Murphy acting cute. The corners of his mouth curled up and he laughed silently. After a while, the car arrived at the kindergarten. There were many cars outside the kindergarten. After all, this was a villa area, and there were many rich people. Yang Yi saw that the car wouldn't be able to squeeze in for a while, so he pulled over and stopped tyrannical. "I'll send Shishi over. You wait for me in the car." Yang Yi reached for the bag on the passenger seat. There was Shishi's small school bag, and there was also a small bag that contained some information about entering the kindergarten. He hesitated for a moment and asked, "Murphy, are you really not going with me?" Murphy hesitated for a moment, but still shook her head and said, "Forget it. If she's recognized, Shishi won't be able to have peace in the kindergarten." However, Murphy still felt a little sad. She couldn't participate in such an important moment for Shishi. When Murphy unfastened the little girl's seat belt, her eyes couldn't help but turn red. "Shishi, you have to be good. You have to listen to your teacher, okay?" Murphy's voice was slightly choked. She pressed her daughter's forehead and said gently. Shishi nodded in a daze. However, she still didn't realize that there was anything wrong with going to kindergarten. The little girl just felt that she might get to know a lot of other children. She was a little nervous, but she also felt that going to kindergarten was very refreshing. She was looking forward to it. Murphy didn't want her emotions to affect Shishi, so she forced a smile and rubbed her daughter's head. She helped her open the car door near the sidewalk. "Say goodbye to Mom," Yang Yi said as he got out of the car and held Shishi's hand. Shishi waved at Murphy obediently and said, "Goodbye, Mom." "Goodbye, Mom will wait for you at home." Murphy held back her tears and waved at Shishi. She felt that her daughter going to kindergarten was more worrying than going to her father's house. After all, the latter was taken care of by Yang Yi. Yang Yi wasn't very reliable in other things, but she had never worried about him taking care of her daughter. Murphy half opened the car door and watched as Yang Yi carried Shishi's small school bag and held Shishi's hand as they walked to the kindergarten. Her heart tightened. Even though the car door was closed, Murphy still looked out through the car window. Suddenly, Yang Yi stopped. Murphy became nervous. "What's wrong? Did you forget something?" "No." Yang Yi squatted down and helped Shishi carry her small school bag. Just then, Murphy turned sideways and could see the smile on Shishi's face. It turned out that the little girl was shameless again. Seeing Yang Yi holding Shishi's hand as they walked into the kindergarten, Murphy reluctantly withdrew her gaze. Originally, Murphy had planned to send Shishi to kindergarten today, and then go back to the company to start preparing for her new album. However, now it seemed that Murphy felt that if she didn't see Shishi come back tonight, she wouldn't have anything else to do. Therefore, Murphy hesitated for a moment, took out her cell phone, and called Mo Shaowan. Shaowan, I'm not going back today. Well, Shishi went to kindergarten, but I feel very nervous. I'll stay with Yang Yi today and ask Yang Yi to send me back tomorrow. Mo Shaowan had actually arranged some things for Murphy, such as meeting the new producer arranged by the company. However, she still threw away the notebook in her hand, chuckled and said rather meaningfully, "Sis, I understand. Cece isn't at home anymore. It's okay, there's nothing to do at the company. You can play for 2 more days." Murphy felt that her cousin's voice was strange, but she didn't have the mood to think about it. She replied with an okay, and hung up the phone. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.